There you go.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to the TAC meeting. We are going to get started. We are recording this meeting. I am multitasking again. I'm trying to make sure all my panelists or all my TAC members are panelists. And then with the attendees, I am allowing you guys to talk, but I'm not promoting you to panelists. So we'll follow the same protocol that we've followed in the past. Raise your hand if you want to talk, and we will. I will try to get to you as soon as I can. I've got a chat screen up also. If you want to put things in the chat, you can. I'll try to watch that also. So let me share my screen. Can you guys see that screen okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is February 28th. We've got two more formal TAC meetings after this. And then we will, as needed, if we need to have some other quick meetings, I think we can still tweak things after the break in the middle of it. But we are going to follow pretty much the same script that we have followed before. We'll do introductions. Actually, we're not going to do introductions. I think everybody on today's attendance list knows everybody. We have one new guest that is just monitoring the conversation, and then if he has any questions, he'll jump in with those questions. And then I'll talk a little bit again about guidelines, overview, and scope, because we are getting some traffic on the video recordings that we post on the State Housing Board page on the website. And so I want to make sure they understand what it is that we're doing. And then looking at the draft changes to the administrative rules, I made them all discussion items today. I did not get a red line copy of the rule changes in place, but I will have one in place by next Thursday, which will have almost everything that we need, I hope, to and cross-checked back to statute and cross-checked with all the updates from the bill, and have that in place for the 14th of February meeting, and actually the Thursday before that. So we want to talk a little bit about remote inspections. We're going to kick it off with that. Then we've got some tiny home discussions. And then we want to talk about some other administrative rule changes and where to go. And that's going to include certified factories, how we're going to possibly be doing that in the future, the plan review by third parties, factory bonding and deposit requirement, the factory built AC approval process, and then we really need to come up with the new name for alternative construction, whether we call it on-site compliance, on-site factory compliance, on-site factory construction. At this point, I don't care if we call it SE, something else, right? But let's try to get that nailed down so we can start writing the forms and documents that need to go along with that. And then we'll talk a little bit about responsibilities, and then we'll talk about something that I've been working on, and that's a continuous improvement program in building codes and standards. And then we'll revisit the schedule, and then we'll wrap up. So as you know, the TAC's made up of 15 members. I've had a couple people show some interest in the architect position or design professional position. I have not got any letters of interest for that, so I've extended that deadline to 3/14. We do have representation on the TAC in that industry, so I'm not real worried about it. But if there is a vacancy on the TAC, I want everybody to know about it. And so we do have a vacancy, and if we can get that filled now or sometime in the future, that'd be great. Like I said, we're going to skip introductions. So for those of you that may be watching the recording, we do have a big job to get done and a tough schedule. We're coming up to the end of that schedule. Priority time will be given to the TAC members. Guests are welcome to comment by raising their hand in the meeting. For new members of the public, which we only have one other state person joining us today, the following will get you up to speed, which is the controlling statute, CRS 243233. The tiny home bill is passed, which was HB 221242. The administrative rules, which is 1302-14, and then the previous TAC meetings and recordings. We're only addressing tiny homes as defined by statute, not RV models, park models, tiny homes without wheels, etc. We're only addressing Colorado law and Colorado rules. We're only addressing foundations for those local jurisdictions that do not have a building department. And we'll follow the guidance language provided in the bill with respect to tiny homes on the fact that it's a small industry, a new industry, and we need to look at costs and the size of the factories and the affordability of the units. But I think that's true in almost everything that we do. But there was no extra consideration in the legislation for reduced cost for tiny homes. Regarding different codes and standards, number 8 here, we can point to Administrative Rule 215, which allows alternatives to be considered. And then to keep us moving, we'd love to get comments in writing or by email or in the form of what they might be stated as an administrative rule. Okay, so as you know, our rules are made up into 8 different sections. Rule 1 is definitions. Rule 2 is codes and standards. Rule 3 is fees. Rule 4 is factories, built residential structures, commercial and non-residential and non-residential. Rule 5 is the sellers of manufactured homes. Rule 6 is installations, and Rule 7 is enforcement. Sue-Ann, I'm promoting you to panelist, and Eric, I've allowed you to talk. So this is more with respect to the previous revised redline version of the rules. I'm still working on the numbering issues and cross-reference checking. If you're opposed to a change, any change in the rules or what we talk about today, please provide information. Why? Is it a health and safety issue? Is it a manufacturing difficulty? Is it duplicative? Is it the wrong code, or is it just impossible to enforce? Or it needs clarification to the intent of what it is that we're proposing. If you're in general agreement to a change but think the wording needs to change, please provide new recommended wording. And then you can use that 214 red line copy to make edits in the Word docket itself. You can send me emails. Phone calls are great too if you want to talk about it, but I really need it in writing at some point in time. Tawny, I'm going to allow you to talk also. Okay, so here's our discussion items for today. I've kind of talked about that already. Let's just jump right into the remote and virtual inspection piece. We put it in the definitions, and we've not gotten a lot of feedback yet on it. Now's the time to have some good, healthy discussion. I know at least 2 of our third-party agencies do remote or hybrid or virtual inspections. So I want to design something that works for everybody. In the past, what we have primarily talked about is doing remote inspections for in-plant production. And that would be pretty much it. I'm fine with going forward with that for a while. I'd like to hear specifically from Robin. I think you're on board. Anybody else that has any experience with the virtual inspections, but most importantly, the local jurisdiction and the local building departments on what they think about this. So our definition is pretty much the same. I changed a couple words that are highlighted. One would be the factory quality assurance rep instead of, I think it just said quality assurance rep before. And then the other one was remote inspections may only be conducted by an approved third-party agency. Anybody want to jump in on their thoughts? And I know both the third-party agencies that I have talked to have a very rigid format, not rigid, but a very thorough process in determining how to do those remote inspections. And we can share those if you guys want to see some of that. But we'll come up and we'll look and see if there's any rules that we need to add in addition to the definition on some type of process for third-party agencies that want to perform remote inspections. Oh, I see some hands up. Good. Eric, I see your hand up first. Eric, I'm not hearing you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I think third-party agencies with third-party inspections with a good quality control protocol makes sense in this context. I mentioned last time that we were doing remote inspections. We were doing remote video inspections during the pandemic because we had to. We prefer to do in-person inspections because then we can see everything we need to see, but that's possible for us because we've got enough inspectors that can drive anywhere in Larimer County. I don't think the state has enough staff to drive all over the place and to other states as well. So if you can set something up where we know that the inspection has covered everything we need to, the inspector who's remote has the ability to ask the camera person or the person holding the cell phone or whatever, the iPad, to look at different things, and things can be changed. And I think it could work. My only concern is if, what NOAA's done up to now, because there's been no other choices, videotape a lot of this stuff. What if we go back and look at the tape and there's something wrong? It's too late to change it now. But if it's in real time and changes can be made, and then you can go back and look at the corrections later, and you videotape it all, I think it's got real possibilities.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Mark?
Good morning, everyone. Sam, we've used this quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit, but we have used it and been successful at it. I think what Eric has also stated is true, that nothing replaces the boots on the ground for monitoring the quality assurance process itself. The remote, you can't get an overview of that. You have to see the actual process in function to get that assessment. But to go back, what Eric was saying is, yeah, we've gone through this, and hopefully, Eric, we haven't had too many where we spotted something later in the review of the footage. But that, I guess that would be a concern from the manufacturer's end, that if we did see something, how would we go back and correct that at that point? But it has been successful. There are states that are using it. It seems to be opened up, but it shouldn't be the coverall. It should be only used when needed. Basically, like I said, the boots on the ground are the best assessment for the entire process of the manufacturer. from the quality assurance point of it. That's about all I got, Sam.
Thank you. And so I had a good discussion with Robert Lee with NTA. He kind of heads up that virtual inspection arm for you guys. And he said, the quote I took away is that this does not replace a quality assurance program, and that but it can be used if needed, and that if we do go to a certified factory type of program, that it still would require an in-site factory visit. And then we could take a look at, if we are finding errors, how to remedy that. I want to go to Mike Morrow next, and then Tim Pate.
Yeah, Sam, I guess it seems a little like, if it reads the way you read it right now, third-party agencies may perform remote inspections for in-plant production inspections upon approval of DOH. I guess as always, my concern is that just like arbitrarily approved at one-off junctures? To me, if the third-party agency is approved and they're doing inspections and they're, like Mark in his company, if it's something that they have a whole arm of their company and they only use it when necessary. I mean, I just wonder if you're going to have this sentence in there, do we need further like explicit instructions for each time of approval? I don't know, that it seems a little vague to me.
So Mike, that's a pretty good point, and I'll take that comment and kind of explain where I was headed with that, and then we can see how to make it best. And that is that third-party agencies can select what they want to do. They may want to do factory certifications. They may want to do in-plant production, either in person or virtually or remotely. They may want to do AC inspections or plan reviews or whatever. So that process may be part of the rulemaking. It may be part of the rules, or it may be just a procedure with a checklist. This is what you want to do, and this is what our expectations are for each of those things. You need to, talk to us about your internal quality controls and your internal policies and procedures and your internal education and experience for your agency in providing those services to the state of Colorado. I hope that clarifies some. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I guess I'm not familiar, which I guess I should be, with the factory quality assurance that is being talked about at least in the definition. My concept was, and I think with how Eric answered with doing remotes, was from a building department standpoint, we don't inspect quality, we just inspect the minimum code requirements. So I'm assuming there's something beyond that this is capturing for quality assurance. And if that's the case, then is there some definition of or set of parameters that the Division of Housing has for factory quality assurance?
So that's a good point, Tim. It's my understanding that to be a registered factory, every factory has to provide a QA manual and appoint a QA representative for that factory. That ensures the quality of the product, not only the materials, but make sure that the QA handbook and manual are being followed. And so that, in this definition, is the person that would be walking around with the video device and camera to and be able to talk to the third-party agency inspector on the other end. And so, yeah, we can clean that up.
So,
But it would be for a registered factory, it would be a remote inspection on every single aspect of that is currently required and currently done by third-party agencies now. Rough construction, the electrical, the plumbing, the framing, every single piece would have the same steps that we would have before.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Yep.
So with that being said, then your group, DOH, would be does this now for an in-plant factory quality assurance rep who's also doing the code inspections, as you said, framing, mechanical, plumbing, et cetera. Then you're making sure that their company has hired, like, say, a licensed electrician or a licensed plumber in Colorado to be able to do those, which is required by the Colorado State Electrical and the State Plumbing Board. At least that's what the typical jurisdiction is required to have. So is that the same setup with the DOH?
Tim, I need to look into that a little bit more. I don't know that I can answer that right now. But I know that with the third party, everything that is being built now is getting that DOH stamp of approval. So I assume that they've worked out this problem before it arrives in the state. So I'm not sure how this would change it as far as the requirements for electrical and plumbing inspections. But the on-site stuff, when it gets to here, would still, like I said, I would expect that to be the local jurisdictions. So I'll
Sam.
take an action item to look into that a little bit more and provide that response.
I'm guessing Mark has something good to say on this.
Mark?
We'll see, Nate. Okay, Tim, the quality assurance process itself in the plants is designed at basically, they're the first line. They do all the compliance inspections. So the third party doesn't live in the plant, but it's a quality assurance process that does the compliance. They provide documentation. They provide both good and bad. If they find a deviation, they're supposed to note it and show the corrective action, and then have quality assurance sign it off to show compliance. The program has been set up underneath the guidelines that training of those personnel that are performing the functions is being done by is overseen and done by quality control. So they're supposed to have the most important people in there to have code knowledge are the quality assurance inspectors, the QA manager and the inspectors. Everybody else in the plant follows their directions off of their approved plans. If there is a code item that comes up, it's quality control that handles that. They give the code requirements. I don't want to say interpretation because I hate that word, but the code requirements for that particular discipline. It is very successful, and it's for lack of a better word, like I said, on the RVI. The RVI unfortunately does not overview that particular function. It is strictly just physical inspections of the construction itself.
Right.
That's why the boots on the ground have to be there.
Can I try, Sam?
Okay, thanks. Nate, is that what you wanted to talk about?
Can I add one item? The big difference, and I've learned a lot about this, Tim, in the last, honestly, 6 months as I've delved into this, is that a QA program is something that comes from the manufacturing world. The manufacturing world has a different inspection process than typical, like what you're used to as a building inspector from an inspecting standpoint. You go out there and you're looking at the product, and you missed a nail in this, piece of OSB field. a QA program is a quality assurance program that basically is a system that produces a product that is in compliance. And so when a QA inspector goes out and he finds a missing nail in a field, it's actually not like a code violation write-up. It's where did the system break down earlier in the manufacturing process that produced that error that ended up in a code, deficiency down the line. And so when a QA inspector is in a factory, they're looking at the success of that system. They're looking at, the policies and procedures and the documentation and does everybody know exactly what they're supposed to be doing in their specific manufacturing station? But when an inspector goes in, they're not doing any of that. They're looking for nails and strapping. And so it's a different philosophy in manufacturing about how the end product is produced versus it's not a report card on code. It's a report card in an inspection process that looks at the process. I don't know if that helps at all, but that's what I've learned over the course of the last little bit.
And my understanding is too, Nate, that this is really a hybrid, right? There is a QA program, which is that factory process, but then there is in-plant production inspections of the number of nails, right? And the size of the nails.
Correct.
Correct.
It's a blended. So I want to jump around to some of my other folks real quick. Robin, I think you've had your hand up, and then I think Sumit, I'm going to go to you next.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what we are discussing with the Colorado. It was the statute really talked about paying consideration to affordability of these homes, and obviously remote inspections more affordable. But the other thing is they wanted the TAC team and the statute to consider the owner builder, the small manufacturer, the custom home builder, and those, when we do our inspections on tiny houses, we're more like Tim than we are like inspecting the plant and then letting them build with a quality assurance person. We're more like a building department for tiny houses on wheels, where we inspect, every stage. We have ICC certified or licensed inspectors, that kind of a thing. So, I understand how the modular home works well with a manufacturing plant that builds a lot of units, and there's a lot of volume there. However, with the smaller volume or just one, I think that this remote inspection would work well on that. The other thing, instead of, I thought I wrote down factory compliance assurance representative rather than quality assurance represent. Maybe that would be a better name. Take out the word quality and call it factory compliance assurance representative. Just a thought. And then I also, I don't know, when Eric was talking, he talked about the recordings. These are done real time. We make sure that there's, the unit is clean and there's not storing material in there, so we can see everything. But the fact that they are recorded and stored is, I think, a good thing. If you're basically just doing a quality assurance checklist or something like that, you can't go back and look at the unit and find any mistakes. That once they're covered over, they're covered over. But the nice thing that they are recorded, and that the Department of Housing can get a copy of those recordings and review should they want to. I think is an advantage to be able to say, this was a mistake. How do we fix this so it doesn't happen again? So I just wanted to kind of tell you my experience in the last 7 years of doing remote inspections, that they have been really useful. I think, there are some good advantages to remote inspections, and, obviously there are some disadvantages. You can't go up and physically move an electric wire to make sure that it's connected, but I don't know how often that happens. But I like the fact that it's more of like a building department rather than a quality assurance system that's done. But anyway, that's my
Okay.
2 cents on
Thanks,
that.
Donovan. Sumit?
Yeah, good morning, Sam. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to say we had some personal experience, our company has with remote inspections, during the pandemic. PEI, which was its own company back in the day. Now they're part of NTA, but they did some remote inspections for our company. And I'm the QA manager for our company here. So they worked with me personally to do some of those remote inspections on our equipment buildings. And it worked pretty well. They did a rough and final inspection, so there was a 2-stage process there. They do all the check the framework and stuff during the rough stage. And then, they come back later during the final assembly portion and did another set of inspections. But, if there was anything that was ever missing, they would just ask for photos, and we'd take photos of the particular spots that they needed more information, or, something was wrong, we'd make those corrections or whatever, and then we'd just send photos of whatever mistakes were cleared or whatever other information they needed. So I think the remote inspection process is a good way to go. We didn't have any issues with it when we used it, so just want to kind of add my comments, and that's kind of our experience regarding remote inspections there.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to run down my list. Nate, I'm skipping you. I don't know if you still have your hand up or not. John McGee?
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
I just wanted to address Tim's question about whether the installers on those, like on your manufactured housing right now, they are not required to be licensed by the 12-155. And I believe the same for 12-115, the Electrical Act. But anything that's installed on site is required to be installed, by licensed people or the homeowner. Does that answer your question, Tim?
I did not know that. I've got some follow-up questions though, once Sam runs through everybody.
Okay,
Okay, so anyways, that's, but in this case, since there's no inspections on tiny homes, the statute does say that if it's not approved by the Division of Housing statutes right now, then they're not really supposed to be getting utilities as is. All righty, thanks.
thanks, John. I appreciate that insight. Tracy?
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo what the guy said. This is kind of a big deal for us as tiny house builders, because you have so many in the state of Colorado that are building one-offs. I've talked to a few recently, and a lot of people are really concerned about this part. So all of the tiny house builders, and I think I can say this for everybody on behalf of this, we're deathly afraid of not having remote inspections because we don't know what it would do to our business. Just because, I can rough in a house, have, wire pulled, whatever, and before my spray foam guys come in, is there going to be a waiting process? Am I going to be waiting on somebody to come in? Do I have a production team of guys standing around twiddling their thumbs because I don't have another build going? I only have one build going. So now I'm, got guys clocked on the hours, and I'm waiting, for somebody to come out here to look at something. And so the inspection process of the third parties is definitely needed for us as a team here in Colorado. The pictures, the videos, we keep folders, files. You guys, I have 500 pictures on almost every single house I've ever built. I have 900 pictures on one house. Okay, so it's hard for me to just think of how this would go in a regular, commercial or residential building, comparing it, trying to do comparison, like it's just different. And so I'm hoping that, the remote inspections not only approved, but that we try to make it as, streamlined and not simple, because we want good inspections, right? But at the same time, we need to make sure that the processes can be achieved smoothly without interrupting production and, the small and the companies, because it's going to end up costing customers more money as well as businesses.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that input.
Yep.
So I think that's all my new people. Let me start running back down through the list of repeats. Nate, did you have something else? Then go, I'll lower your hand for you. Mark, did you have something else?
The one thing I wanted to bring up, Sam, is that basically to become a certified manufacturer, this is based on the functionality and the effectiveness of that quality control system. That's why it's very, very important to make sure that we monitor that. Not that, Tim, not that we take anything away from inspections on the buildings, but the primary function is to monitor that quality assurance process. They're the first ones. That implant process is the first line of defense that makes sure that that unit is compliant. And that's why this certification to the quality assurance process is very, very important.
So Mark, I appreciate that. And you got to remember, we've got two levels of factories. We've got registered and certified, and the certified ones have a little more trust and performance history and performance quality. So we need to design a system that will work for registered and certified factories. Does that make sense?
Right, and it's the amount of surveillance that is done is the difference between that registered and that certified manufacturer. A registered is basically 100% of the manufacturing, all phases of construction. When a certified manufacturer, we go in, we've got a typical full line, or in Tracy's case, we've got a section where we've already done this part, the stop point is the next one, and basically, yeah, they move forward at their pace after they're certified. Basically, we've proven that their quality assurance process works.
Right. And so with that said, the current certified factory rules allow one inspection at any point of production.
Correct.
And so that's a privilege that we give with that certification, but a registered still requires every stage to be inspected.
Right.
All right, cool. No, Nate, not yet. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. So this is maybe just for clarity. If we have a manufacturer, in this case, a tiny home manufacturer, or otherwise a manufacturer in the state of Colorado, is it not true? That's a double negative. Is it true that they need to have a licensed electrician and a licensed plumber doing the installation? And I see Nate shaking his head no. And I had no idea on that. So of course, if it's out of state, that'd be the same thing. So you could have a carpenter putting in wiring. Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, Tim, the DOLA and DORA rules are different. So in DORA, they require those requirements for registration as an electrician and plumber. But in DOLA, there is no set requirements for those personnel.
And Tim, I don't know how far back that went. We've been doing it that way, but that's my understanding too. All right, Nate, you got your out. Sorry, Janine, you still got your hand up. I'm sorry, I missed you earlier.
No problem. And I guess one of the concerns that Tim and I both have, we understand that the installation is not necessarily done by a licensed professional, but is the inspection done by a certified professional in the factory, whether it's a point in time, whether it's a certified or a registered factory? That is one of our concerns, I think. And I don't know if DOLA and DORA are different on that as well, but I guess it's terrifying to me to think that a carpenter can be pulling wire and installing plumbing in a factory? I know that we don't have control over that, but what about the inspection process? Because that's one of our concerns.
Mark, I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you to respond to that.
Okay.
Because
Thanks,
I
Sam.
don't know the requirements for the third-party agency inspector.
Well, just real quick, hey, Sam and Janine, if you
Go
look
ahead,
at 427 of our rules, there's set requirements for inspectors. So
There you go.
you can't just get anybody off the street and have them inspect. So there are requirements for inspectors. There's not any set requirements. That is something that we discussed integrating into the rules because it just says that you must have an ICC certification if you're going to be doing inspections at the factory, but it doesn't say what type, right? So we have discussed changing the rule to set a minimum amount, especially for inspectors who are going to be looking at commercial versus residential structures. So that is in our rules already.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And just
Janine.
for a clarification, Janine, basically, the analogy that was given, a carpenter pulling wire, that is not necessarily the case. Inside these factories, each individual discipline is a different department. They work within that department. Electricians are trained as electricians. Plumbers are trained as plumbers. Carpenters are trained as carpenters. They very seldom overlap on their job performances. If I need an electrical problem solved in final finish or something, I don't call the carpentry, I don't call roofing department, I call the electricians to come up there.
Yep.
So just to give you that little bit of a clarification, they are trained on their individual disciplines.
Nate?
For the Tracy and for the tiny home folks, I don't see you guys operating these factories as a certified factory with a whole QA program and all the things that involve. You will most likely be a registered factory that then requires more code compliant type inspections throughout the building process. Just from an observation, the QA program is quite the undertaking. It's really designed for a manufacturing production line type environment, not a crib building or whatever we would call that. Second point to Tim and Janine is that the carpenter, the non-licensed electrician that is pulling wire, or the non-licensed plumber that is installing plumbing in these products from a factory standpoint, that's actually how it's been for 50 years in this industry. Every single product you've ever seen was built exactly with those credentials from a labor standpoint in the factory. It's central to the manufacturing concept of a production line, quality assurance versus it's a different mentality on building. You cannot apply the traditional inspection process to a manufacturing environment. If you could, we wouldn't have this entire program. And this entire program is set up. Like, I will also say, I want to point out that the requirements that we have in our state in regards to the licensing of labor in those various trades is the same that every other state in the country has. And so I want to establish that from a standpoint of, thinking that we're going to possibly do something different than how this industry works in every other state. Thanks.
Okay, Nate, I'm going to let Tracy respond to that, and then I'm going to go to Margarita and then Rich P after that.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I cannot speak for everybody, and I realize that here, but we don't have a carpenter pulling wire, just so everybody knows. Okay, it doesn't work like that. Carpenters, everybody has their own role, as Nate was explaining earlier, and trust me, not everybody wants to pull wire or do breaker panels or whatever, so you have to have somebody trained in that area. And so we as builders, you know, we do have different departments and we do have different manufacturing processes from the perspective of having a line and different departments. And so what makes me a little bit nervous, and I need to get educated on this, but the difference between registered and certified, as you guys were talking about the differences between the registered and certified, I circled certified, Nate, because I feel like I would rather go down the certified path. But I also hear you telling me, and you've been a great resource for me. I've learned a lot from you personally, Nate. So it seems like I would want to go down, or the builders in the state would want to go down the path of certified and not registered, especially if registered is going to require multiple in-house inspections. That's going to cause significant pain. I already have a quality control process and quality assurance process. If you look at the third-party inspectors we're already using, like NOAA with Robin or Pacific West Associates, we already have a quality assurance manual that we have to follow, that each one of us had to create. And we have documentation that does our electrical and our plumbing testing, that we have to document our testing. So I feel like we do have quality control and quality assurance in place. Obviously, we need to get it up to par to what the state expects. But at the same time, I just want to assure people that we can't build these houses without a QA or QC process. You will end up, as a tiny house builder with $200,000 a year in warranty repairs if you do not have a QA QC process, and you will end up going down the path of bankruptcy or something, or closing your company down. I can assure you, okay, because I've seen it. So the reason why I bring this up, you guys, is because you guys tell me, what the difference is and what we should be doing.
I think there will be a path for every factory to become certified. I just don't know what that looks like right now. We're in the discussions on how to revise that right now, but it's not going to be, you have to be one or the other. We'll figure out how that's going to work. All right, Margarita, I was going to go to you next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Tracy just say it, we do a work on a production line is on a different scale than the manufacturing, than the modular home companies. But again, I mean, we do have to follow certain processes. I just want to clarify to Janine as well that maybe the big question is when an individual is building a tiny home on her own. And so these individuals who are, populating the internet with YouTube videos and this and that, showing how they can install plumbing, roughing plumbing, power, etc. Electrical lines everywhere on their own. That's what the question mark is, I think, from Janine, but we as on a more of a large scale producers, if we can say, we can call ourselves on a large scale producers, we should have, licensed plumbing. I don't really know if they are licensed, but they are certainly insured, and they are coming to the factory in a regular basis. Again, they are not employees, but they do. We count on them certainly as professionals, more than just pops and moms trying to do their best with their homes.
Thank you, Margarita. John P. on my attendee list. Rich P.
No worries. All right, I appreciate it. So I work with NOAA on a part-time basis and completing remote inspections and other activities. And I'm also a building official in the state of Pennsylvania who works with a third-party inspection agency. I can say without a doubt that remote inspections do work. To give a little substantiation to that is if you look around the country, you have places like the city of North Las Vegas. They have a very intensive remote inspection program. I mean, you have that, you have Santa Barbara, California, Garner, North Carolina, Pensacola, Florida. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The one that really grabbed my attention now, when I was just doing a little bit of research, was the Food and Drug Administration. They started a program during the pandemic like everybody else. And in a 2-year span, they completed over 900 remote inspections. And it varied from in-plant surveillance to pre-approvals and the like. But, you know, they're actually expanding their program even to a greater capacity. So the ability's there, and, you know, I think it's worthwhile to have a strong consideration for that. That's all.
Thank you, Rich. All right, I see a few more hands up. Does somebody want to, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to get through all the slide deck if we keep going on this. Anybody else want, Tim, do you want to add something else?
I just have one more question. Thank you. And then move on to the next one. So for clarity, in a plant, whether it's certified or registered, when the unit is completed, is there any what I call final inspection process, which would be checking stairs, handrails, egress window, do a plug check on all your electrical, make sure arc fault's in, ground fault in? Is that completed by somebody before it gets delivered? And if so, then who is doing that? Is that coming from this third-party agency that's reviewed and approved by DOH?
Anybody want to take that one? Nate says yes. Mark?
Yes, Tim.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Nate, and I'll follow up.
I'm going to keep it brief. The answer is yes, Tim.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, Tim. Yes, it is. Yes, and it is multi-layered. You have the worker himself, then the lead person, then the foreman, then the quality assurance process in plant, and then the third party comes in. So it's multi-layered. And yes, every unit that goes out of final is checked for all functionality. That is correct.
Okay.
Hey, Tim, have you ever been in a plant before to see the process?
Me?
I just invited him up.
Okay.
I literally just said, Tim, let's go to a factory. Yeah. Yep.
No, I have not. We went to Lions, but we were outside having that and went in one of the units.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah,
go
I think
to
that'd be a good idea, and that's something we can certainly set up.
Yeah.
And then so you can see the actual process.
Janine went the other day, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
No, we did not. It got snowed
yeah.
in.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's something we can set up so you can actually see the process. But yeah, there's definitely a travel sheet that goes with it, almost like a permit card that travels with that unit. And so as it's going through each phase of construction, there's somebody checking off whether or not there's an issue. Was that issue fixed? Is it good to go to the next station? And it just travels all the way through until it meets that final walkthrough stage. And then it gets its final sign off. And then at that point, that's where that third party agency or the Division of Housing will place, the third party agency will place a inspection sticker saying that home has met all the requirements as approved on the state approved plans and is okay to ship to the final location.
Yep. All right, good. Guys, I'm gonna move to the next one. Nate, you still got your hand up. I assume that's an accident. Yeah, okay. All right, thanks. Really good discussion, guys, on this. So there was a question last time about tiny home villages. Did I skip a slide? No, tiny home villages. So let's talk about that for just a minute. I don't expect that to be defined in our rules because I don't want to complicate it with the definition of a tiny home park. I'm sorry, a mobile home park. But the controlling statute is CRS 3812-201.5, which is also my responsibility. It's the Mobile Home Park Act. And there's a definition in there that, as used in this part 2 and part 11 of this article 12, number 5, mobile home means A, B, and then C. A tiny home is defined in section 2432, which we've already defined in our section of the Colorado statute, that is used as a long-term residence in the mobile home park. So what's a mobile home park, right? CRS 3812-201, number 6. A mobile home park or park means a parcel of land used for the continuous accommodation of 5 or more occupied mobile homes and operated for the pecuniary, which basically I read as financial benefit of the owner of the parcel of land or the owner's agents, leases, or assignees. Mobile home park does not include mobile home subdivisions where the land is sold with the unit, and I added that, or property zoned for manufactured home subdivisions, again, where the land is sold with the unit. For purposes of this definition, the parcel of land comprising the mobile home park does not need to be contiguous, but must be in the same neighborhood as determined by the division. Basically, that gets you out of the right of way and across the street arguments. It's not to be confused with RV parks, which are not regulated by DOH. And then there is sometimes confusion when it's a mixed use park, right? You've got RVs and mobile homes. But again, the mobile home, if it's a mixed use park and there's 5 mobile homes or 5 tiny homes where it's a long-term residence, it is going to be defined as and come under the regulation of the Mobile Home Park Act, which is CRS 38. And I don't remember who had that question on what is a mobile home park, but that is, and what's going to be a tiny home village. So if you have, let's just go with a complicated structure. Well, let's go with 2 examples. One, a mobile home park that has mobile homes and tiny homes slots, right? If the tiny home owner is not on the land underneath it, and there's more than 5 combined tiny homes and mobile homes, it's a mobile home park. The more complicated ones get to where you have RVs, mixed use, RVs and mobile homes. And that is going to be determined by the length of occupancy, right? Long-term residents in that park, whether they're in a mobile home or whether they're in a tiny home, it will be qualified as a mobile home park. So people that we are already starting to talk to some people that are advertising tiny home villages. The ones that we've taught that jump to the top of my mind, they're operating them as RV parks. And because they can't meet the definition right now of what a tiny home is, because that hasn't, based on our statute, because that hasn't gone into effect yet, right? And I know, Byron, you had a question before the call started on what about all these units that have been built before this law goes into effect. So we can talk about that too. But does that help clear it up some? Margarita, do you still have your hand up? Was that?
Yeah, no, it's about these tiny home villages. So my question is, in a tiny home village in which there's a mixed use, including RVs and tiny homes and mobile homes, the RVs have a high risk of fire, and things like that. So is that, can we have a consideration on the fire risks of each different units? Because mobile homes and tiny homes are going to be regulated and fire protected and all these, but RVs are not. So what is going to happen in that case?
Margaret, I don't know that I have a really good answer to that. We even in mobile home parks, what we see is long-term leases and month-to-month leases, right? Even in mobile home parks that haven't moved for mobile homes that haven't moved in 20 years, some of those on a month-to-month lease. But if the unit hasn't moved in, and we don't have a an approved point in time. Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Where we classify long-term occupancy? It's going to be very difficult. And what we are probably going to have to do is work with the local jurisdiction and ask the local jurisdiction, do you consider this a mobile home park? Do you consider this a mixed use park? And then we can take a look at how long the units have been there to determine if it's going to fall underneath the Mobile Home Park Act. Nate?
I don't know if Tawny's online or not, but one of the things I just kind of want to flag that somebody should look into here is that if something is defined as a mobile home park in our state, there have recently been a lot of laws adopted around mobile home parks as far as rent control items. There's a right of first refusal if something's considered a mobile home park for the tenants of the mobile home park to be able to buy the property before it is sold. There's funds set up at Chaffa in the state to assist mobile home park residences to buy the properties. So like there's a whole litany of things that happen once you start to be considered and fall underneath the definition of a mobile home park in our state right now. And I don't know if this pushes any of this into that, but you need to be aware if it does, there's a lot of outside components that are going to start to affect it. That's all. Just want to flag that.
It is fairly complicated, and there are we spend a lot of time with increases in rent, under the mobile home park statute, you can only increase rent once a year to your units. You have to give proper notice. If your water goes out, you have to provide, as the mobile home park owner, you have to provide water, showers, access to bathrooms, and if not, you're in violation. You have to annually register as a mobile home park. You have to give us the physical addresses for every unit in that mobile home park. It is, if you're going to create a tiny home village, and that's not the intent of this group, talk to me and we will have a meeting with Christina Postolowski, who runs the mobile home park program, on how best to do that. If you're, again, it's very easy though, if you're selling the land with the unit, then it's not a mobile home park, it's a mobile home subdivision. And then it's also I will go back to the locals though. If the locals allow 6 months of parking, there are people, we know that there are people that live in the RVs year round across the state. And so regardless of what the local jurisdiction requirements are, it gets more complex than one slide, but I did want to try to keep it on one slide. Tawny, you got your hand up. Thank you, Tawny.
You bet. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, and everything that everybody has said is correct. Yeah, and it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to define tiny home village because so the Mobile Home Park Act, if you have a mobile home park per the definition, if you even place one of these new Colorado tiny homes in the mobile home park, it's included in the Mobile Home Park Act. Or if you have that development that is 5 or more units, then it would be considered a mobile home park, and you would be considered to be compliant with all the laws. And there are a ton of regulations, everybody, and they're growing by the day. I just attended a meeting yesterday to discuss water, so water regulations in mobile home parks. So, and we don't need to get into the weeds about that because it's a whole different law, etc. But just to provide my input, yeah, the tiny homes will be considered mobile homes if there are 5 or more. Or if you place one in a park that has, let's say, 4 mobile homes, then that new Colorado tiny home going in there would then trigger the requirements of all of the laws that regulate mobile home parks. If you add that one tiny home to 4 manufactured homes, then they are considered a mobile home park. So just FYI, everybody.
And Mike, thank you, Tawny. Excellent points. And Mike, I see you put some good information in the chat. Also, I appreciate that. And then Byron, let's have that. Oh, Byron left. Oh, we don't have.
Byron's still here.
Byron's still good. And Nate, you're asking, hang on just a second, Byron, can we specifically exclude them from the Mobile Home Park Act? I don't think we want to do that.
Well, let me make a point here, is that if somebody has a property in rural wherever and 5 tiny homes are parked on the thing, all of a sudden, all of the Mobile Home Park Act kicks in. And the thing with the mobile home industry is that they're not really, I mean, they are movable, you know, you can transport them, but they typically don't, you know, they kind of go and they get installed and they stay there. Whereas like, you know, like how does rolling 5 tiny homes into an RV site not make that RV site a technical definition of mobile home park?
It's the definition of that RV park, right? Specifically, mobile home parks do not include RV parks. And so we don't regulate RV parks. It's the length of occupancy. If it's an RV park and there's.
So yeah, and I don't know enough about the mobile home park rules, but I just.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. If they roll 5 tiny homes, let's say there's 20 RVs there that are year round, and you roll 5 mobile home parks that are designed for long-term occupancy, does that change?
Right.
That nature of that.
And all the, yeah, like that. Yeah, but the problem is it can change it, but then if one leaves, it reverts back.
Correct.
That's the issue that I see. Like, and so I go back to my comment is, can we say that tiny homes do not count under the Mobile Home Park Act?
Well, that would take a change in legislation to 3812-201.
Would it? Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 3812.
Whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm just saying this.
It is specifically defined last year in 3812-201.
Okay.
All right. All right. So, Mike, I see your comment. Thank you. And Byron, let's talk a little bit about your concern on everything that's been built in the tiny home in the state of Colorado or elsewhere that might be coming in and looking for long-term occupancy in the state of Colorado.
Okay, I'd like to bring Tracy in on this discussion as well.
Okay.
I'm not as concerned about things that are coming in because I would anticipate they should comply with the new laws. But you know, I've built a lot of houses. I've built, I don't know, a little bit less than 100 houses over the past 8.5 years, almost 9 years. And the people who are living in them, more than half of those, I think I'm correct, more than half of those, a lot more than half are in the state of Colorado. And these people have their life invested into their homes and they can't be expected to vacate them if they can't comply with the building regulations. Now, I heard Nate say earlier that they're going to be grandfathered. I hadn't heard that previously. I know it had been spoken about, but I never heard that it was going to happen. And then Sam, you had concern as soon as you heard the word grandfather. So that all needs to be discussed. You know, a lot of homes that are here, tiny homes, would never pass the regulations that we've agreed to. Now, I will say in the last 6 to 7 years, I think almost every home I've built will, but I mean, how do you prove it? Like Tracy, I've got lots of pictures. I don't have hundreds of pictures, but I have lots of pictures. So we have to have concern for all those tiny home dwellers as to what's going to happen when this law is in effect.
Okay, so I'll give you my thoughts. There was a a comment before the meeting started about grandfathering these things in. It is not the intent of the Division of Housing to grandfather and give out stickers or insignia for anything that was built before this law. The question in my mind, and you guys help me out, this is why we have this TAC and we have open discussion, is if somebody is living in a tiny home and their local government, their local building department has given them a CO, it is not the intent of the state to take away a CO and tell them that they have to move. What will happen is, as we see these tiny homes installed into different building departments around the state, it is going to, excuse me, it's going to be up to the owner of that tiny home to work with their local building department to satisfy them that it is a safe structure for year-round residency or long-term residency, right? That's the only way I can see this working. And if I need to write up a fact sheet that this is what we're going to do, and the current, and we make that available on the website, I have a pre-2023 tiny home. How do I move it to Colorado into a local building jurisdiction and get a certificate of occupancy? And Donnie keeps telling me that there are some local governments that don't even do COs. So we've got to figure that out also. I see somebody's hand up. Mark, is your hand still up?
Yeah, I got a quick question for you and Donnie, I guess. Underneath this, could there be a date set for tiny homes that are in process that basically could come underneath the as-built? I don't like that grandfathered in as well, but the as-built program has been effective in Colorado. Just a thought.
So Mark, that's a really good question, but they're not a registered factory yet. And they're not I see difficulty there with us not having to check their QA, that we don't know what all inspections that they've had. And I'm going to let Donnie go next. He and I need to huddle and see if there's any way to look at. My initial thought was anything that's coming in from out of state or is built between 2023 that wants to be installed into a local government could follow the MHIP, similar to pre-1976 mobile homes. But it gets a little iffy. Donnie, you want to talk about that, and then I'll go to Tracy.
Yeah, just real quick, I would say the as-built right now, it can be useful, but a lot of the cases that we've been recently dealing with, it's more like they're building and then asking for forgiveness. So not saying that we can't do an as-built process, but as Sam said, they're not registered factories at this time, right? And then with this being, a lot of these products are most likely going to be at the site location already. That's one thing we're going to have to consider that I kind of talked about earlier, is that our program is for off-site construction. So I think there's going to be some collaboration between us and local building departments if we go that route. But that's something we're going to definitely have to talk about. Because even, I don't think any building department likes grandfathered, that word grandfathered. If they're going to talk about existing structures, they're going to talk about existing structures, and they have existing structured code books that they use. So it's going to involve more conversation. I don't think it's going to be anything that we can decide today or tomorrow or any remaining time that we have here. But it's definitely something that we need to discuss.
Okay, Donnie, thanks. Very good point. Tracy?
I'm in the same realm. I didn't know about the whole grandfather thing. I didn't think we were going to grandfather. That's what we had talked about at the beginning. But I will tell you guys this, after going through the res check process and taking a lot of, education from Robbie and going through that process on the tiny houses, I'm going to be very, very honest, and I'm going to pull this off like a Band-Aid. The majority of tiny houses in the state of Colorado that were built prior to these codes are not going to meet our value. They're not. And so if I have a tiny house that was built 2 years ago and it's missing, I don't know, let's say 4 R values in the roof, you know, I think something's going to have to be done. Like you guys said, we're not going to figure it out now, but it's going to have to be something that we're going to have to talk about, whether it's existing structures and as-built permit process, but we've got to have some sort of path for these tiny housers that are living in these houses that can get up to compliance or to the certification or whatever we're going to call it, right? To code, okay? To make it legally, you know, able to park. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because the truth, and you know, whether people have built 100 houses or 10 houses, unless they put a serious insulation in that roof, they're not meeting code, period. Even, and just so you know, Sam, when we did the res check thing, we did it 2 ways, right? And we did it on my nonprofit houses because I was worried about those houses, right? Because we had to, you know, do certain things, even though it's very still high quality. But if we are not filling the entire cavity of the roof with insulation, I'm not going to meet code, period. And so I can assure you that the majority of tiny houses across the state of Colorado, I'm not too worried about, you know, plumbing and electrical and some of those other things. People know how to, you know, understand how to pull the right gauge wire and things like that. But it's that R value that was never defined when these houses were built. And so how do you go fix that problem afterwards?
So Tracy, I want to take a small diversion and then I'll go to the rest of the hands in the room. You sent Robbie some plans and he ran a res check based on both the 2018 and the 2015 IECC, and you passed both of those, one by 1% and the 2015 code by 3%. If I asked him to clarify for me, I don't know if you were on that email or not. So right now, you think that you can meet the 2018 res check going forward, right? Even though we're on a 2015 code?
Yeah, it's just a requirement of the entire cavity of the roof has to be filled, and that will meet the R value per 2018 IRC. Unfortunately, there are many, many tiny houses out there that do not have those cavities filled. Even, I'm going to tell you guys the truth. I've got 2 inches and 3 inches of spray foam in most walls and ceilings. As the code is being written right now to 2018, I will not meet it in some past previous houses. Those previous houses that were built will meet code in every other way except for R value, and they're going to miss it by a couple of R values. So
Yeah.
what are those people going to do?
That's a really good question, and I'm going to make a note on that. Byron, and I assume you wanted to jump in?
Yes, I would like to jump in. Thank you very much. I want to give you a case in point. Stacy Decker. We started building his house when this bill started being written. We did everything we could as it was being discovered and determined and defined to build to the standards that we are discussing right now. His home went to Walsenburg this past summer to be placed on a foundation. He has had so much challenge dealing with inspections, electrical, plumbing. It's like they didn't want the water heater to be installed before it was in place. It's like so many things. This man is extremely intelligent. I'm concerned about these homeowners, tiny homeowners that don't have the same level of intellect as this person does, navigating the challenges of trying to get through this whole process, no matter what it is. And I think we're going to need to find a way to like have it so you can hold people's hands and not make it an IQ test as much as it might be. Because like Stacy is like one of the more intelligent people I've known, and he has just almost called me in tears at times. And it shouldn't be so burdensome that people are just going to stay renegade and not try and do it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that build them and just do what we've been doing for the last 10 years in the tiny home industry, and you know, just being renegade and putting them wherever we want to without permission and without COs. So we have to find a way to encourage compliance and registration as you would like, or out of lack of a better term, of all these pre-built homes.
And I think
know.
that is very well said, Byron, and I think that there is a role for industry and the nonprofits to take a look at how to do that. I'm not sure it's going to fall within our statute, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to be up to the education and willingness from the local jurisdictions. But that's just my personal opinion on that. Nate, would you like to clarify your definition of?
I'm the one that said grandfathered it when we were
Grandfathered?
all talking in the beginning and got everybody going. I want to clarify what I was thinking about and where this call has gone is, you know, when I say grandfathered, I don't mean certified to the codes of this new program, grandfathered in that way. What I mean is that they're allowed to stay the way they are. They're not required to be upgraded to the standards of this program. Now, that might mean that those homes then aren't afforded the rights as homes that are built to the new program's code. They might not be able to be put on a permanent foundation. They might not be able to be CO'd by the local jurisdiction because they don't meet the requirements of this program, but they're not going to be required to upgrade to this program. And so I guess that was my grandfathered comment.
Yeah.
Similar to how we handle the older mobile homes that were built to different standards way back when. They're allowed to stay the way they are. They don't have to upgrade themselves either.
I want to hear from a couple of the local building departments. Tim, next.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just gonna make a reminder comment. Tracy brought up just the issue with running the energy code. And I know we're not exactly talking about the energy code, but just to throw this back on the table, I know you brought this to the table earlier for the new Colorado State Energy Code and the State Energy Code group that will be completed and required by July 1st to be adopted. And within that legislation, Sam and Donnie, I'm pretty certain you know, is that there's requirement for the Division of Housing to review and also get that in place. So, which would require the 2021 Energy Code. So, which is more restrictive. But with all that being said, that's going to be coming down the pike here for the Division of Housing sometime in the fall. I don't know that timing, but that was just my comment as a reminder.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. So yeah, how we meet 2021 IECC is going to be a very interesting discussion. Donnie, I'll go to you and then Margarita.
All right, I think I had my hand up for something else. I forgot what it was for.
Okay, good. Margarita.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you, Nathan, for explaining better what grandfather-in is. So let me explain it from the residential point of view as well. That's where our niche has been for the last 5 years. So any of the houses in Denver, metropolitan area, or Colorado today, a regular house can meet IECC 2018 code standards, but they are grandfathered in on previous legislations. And so if they want to renovate those houses or extend the house by more than 40%, then they have to meet standards, current standards. So imagine a tiny house on wheels being the biggest, 400 square feet, having an extension, renovation, or whatever of more than 40%, that's a totally new house. So we don't have, this is to say that previous houses, tiny homes built before 2023 won't have to be up to code. They don't have to be brought up to code. And I think that should be the end of the discussion. I think there has been a misunderstanding, and previous tiny homes shouldn't be even be questioned about meeting standards or not. Now we are setting these codes, these rules, regulations. For us, we're going to improve our industry and we're going to meet code. But the previous ones definitely shouldn't.
Okay, thank you, Margarita. Eric?
Yeah, these rules are proactive. I mean, they're going forward, so it's allowing a path to legalization for tiny homes built after July 1st, 2023 under the state program, et cetera. And we know there's lots of them out there, but they won't be under the state jurisdiction is what I understand. So therefore, it's going to be up to each local city, county, or town. There's no way the state could wave their magic wand and say these are all accepted by locals. So what we've got essentially is a house on a piece of property. And I don't know how every local government's going to do it. I know what my intention is. I kind of feel like if these rules pass, I will have a green light to do something by the state because they'll be saying, no, these are in our jurisdiction, they're yours. So we would handle them as an as-built building permit for a dwelling like any other as-built permit. We'd start with the land use code. They're allowed one house per property in most zoning districts. Is this one house or is this more than one house? If it's more, is it an accessory living area or something? Does it meet setback requirements? Is it in a floodplain? All that good stuff. That's all good. Then we would do an as-built building permit. If they're going to put it on a temporary or permanent foundation as we define it, we'd probably call it a building. If it's going to just stay on wheels, we'd call it an RV, and it'll be subject to our RV rules. We're going to issue a building permit. We'd want to have a licensed professional engineer give us their opinion on whether it's structurally sound for the snow and the wind load. We're going to look at whether it meets wildfire hazard requirements. We're going to look at is the electrical and plumbing safe. We'd require a little state licensed master plumber and master electrician to check those things. And then we would do, our own inspection to see if it at least met Appendix Q requirements for tiny homes. And if all those things were good, we would probably issue an as-built permit, and then we'd be able to issue maybe not a certificate of occupancy, but an as-built certificate of compliance or something like that. So our intention would be to permit the ones we can, if they were built to a certain quality standard. I wouldn't worry as much about the energy because it's not a life safety issue. And I have authority to issue code modifications or approvals for alternate means and methods. And we know tiny homes use a lot less energy than a bigger home, even if it's more efficient. So we would probably find a way to legalize most of them. But now if there was a tiny home built in, in Steve's garage and it's unsafe electrically and doesn't meet any codes, no, we're probably not going to approve that just because someone, spent money on that thing. It's got to meet some kind of minimum safety standard for us to approve it. So that's my take on it.
Eric, thank you so much for that. And I agree with Tracy. That makes sense to me. And that's, I think that's something for us to consider. I still want to come up with a fact sheet for pre-2023 built tiny homes that meet the Colorado definition or are close to meeting the Colorado definition. We'll keep working on that. Panelists. Mark, did you have something on this?
Basically just a question, I guess, Sam. Going back to Tracy, it seems to be that a lot of this focus on compliance for the tiny homes is based on energy. And with the progression going on with the energy going as fast as it is, I'm really not sure what her proposal or are we going to come up with a proposal to, I don't want to say exempt tiny homes, but basically give them some lateral on their energy performance as far as the thermal envelope?
And so, Mark, I'll comment on that first, and that is, we can't be the only state with dealing with this. What I'd really like to hear is from industry saying, what are you guys seeing in other states that works? Is it an exemption? Is it a alternative, something that would fall underneath our Rule 215 on alternative methods and standards? And that might be some way to incorporate some of that too. But we can't. I think Colorado is fairly lenient. And again, this is just me speaking. By being on the 2015 IECC, we can't be the only state that's on 2021.
That is correct. And basically living as far west as I can possibly almost be, basically dealing with California, Oregon, and Washington as much as I do, these are very aggressive states toward the energy, very aggressive. And they are basically, in California, it's compliance. That's just the way it is. Oregon has a little bit more lateral with it, as does Washington. But depending on the location in Washington, whether you're going to get some lateral on it or not. But these 3 states on the West Coast are very aggressive towards this energy compliance. And that depends, Tracy. If you go into one of the 16 climate zones that are in California, you put one in at that ski resort in Bear, you're not going to get away with a R11 in the walls and stuff. They will not allow those up there. I deal with a lot of the San Francisco, Santa Rosa, San Jose areas, and they're not your minimal R value insulations. They are basically a performance. They're based on a performance, which would help us, and maybe our energy guys on here can also help with this, is it's based on the overall performance of that unit, not just the R value. So high efficiency heaters, good windows, good doors, all of these components go into this that make this come out. Now, Sam, you said that they did run a res check on a couple of these?
Yeah.
We did.
One of Tracy's units.
Yeah, we
Okay.
did 2 of them actually.
And they showed compliance?
We meet compliance at over 1.6% if we fill the cavities to 3 inches on the walls and 3.5 inches on the roof. We went with a low end window with a 0.27 UV versus a higher UV, just because we were doing some nonprofit houses and I wanted to see how they shored up against. And so I went with a lower end window. And when it came to the performance, we beat it by 1.6%. However, when I had Robbie change it down to like 2.5 in the walls, we missed it, right, by 3%. We were out of compliance by negative 3.2%, but when I fill the cavities, I'm at compliance at 1.6. The only thing I noticed with the res check though, you guys, is the free software doesn't let you go into a granular detail like the paid software does. For example, it shows that like this res check shows like asphalt shingles. Well, we don't use asphalt. We use metal standing seam, which is superior to asphalt. So I couldn't change things like that. And so I feel like if we did it in the other software, that we would probably perform even better just because of how tight our envelope is.
Now, which other software? Are you talking ComCheck?
We went and used the free software on ResCheck. You just go out there. It was the online version. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you use WebCheck instead of ResCheck?
No, we used, hold on, I'll pull it up. We used ResCheck. Robbie did it. I did it with him, and so did Brad.
Okay, yeah, it's still ResCheck, but there's a web-based version,
Yes,
and then
sir.
there's a downloadable version.
It was the web-based version. It wasn't the paid downloadable version.
Okay, yeah, you cannot go long form, but in the downloadable version, you can actually go long form on there. It just takes a little bit more to work with.
And,
Now,
and we want to do that, just so you know. Brad and I kind of took this up on as a team, and we want to go into the granular detail because we really think that we're performing better than 1.6. So, but because we couldn't go into the granular detail of some of the materials like roofing, you know, even sheathing. You know what I mean? Like we're using, you know, certain sheathing. We're not using plywood and Tyvek. You know, it's different. So, but we weren't able to account for all of that.
okay, that's because ResCheck, when you put in an assembly, it does the autofill for the simulation on its own. It does it. It's not like CBEC in California where I build that entire unit, or IES where I build that unit from scratch, where I can add each component in there and get a true overall for that. Now, with that being said, Sam and Donnie, is there, what the energy code says is that I have to use some type of an approved software. I know ResCheck has been the standard for many, many years, but there are other softwares out there that do show compliance. They do a little bit more modeling. They do a little bit better modeling because, like Tracy is saying, I'm allowed to go in there and build that unit. And there's an ASHRAE standard that basically I take this model and I compare it to a standardized model, and as long as I meet 85% of that model, I'm in compliance. But it's a little bit drawn out, Tracy, and it does take some, when I can do res check, I can do a res check in about maybe 40 minutes on a big home.
Yeah.
If I use my ASHRAE method, or if I use the CBEX, we're talking about 3 or 4 hours sometimes
I
for me
would
to do all the data.
I would assume so, because it took Robbie, he was driving, and Brad and I were just, part of the team going through the motions with him. He drove the software, and it took us an hour and a half to do too.
Okay.
All right, so it's, Mark, thank you for that. It sounds like there's some options there. Guys, I really have a lot of other topics to go through. Margarita, you want to bring us home on this one, and then we'll change slides?
Yeah, no, move forward. I mean, once you had performed the first res check, the second and the third ones are fast easier to say something. And then the continuous closed cell installation makes a lot of sense. So it might increase a little bit the installation price, but it does make sense, and it improves the quality of the house. So.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to jump to the next topic, and this is one more slide on tiny homes. So there was some discussion last time, and I just wanted, this may not be a comprehensive list, but I wanted everybody that is dealing with tiny homes to really take a look at the administrative rules and what is going to be required to be a registered or certified factory. And if you're selling direct to the consumer, you're also going to have to be a factory, a registered seller. So I think a fact sheet that we come up again for the tiny home industry on this might be a good addition to the administrative rules that will point them in those factories in the exact places. We've already talked about following the same administrative rules. They'll have to have a factory registration and inspection. They'll have to have a QA manual and a QA representative or a quality control representative in the factory. And it doesn't have to be an independent person. It can also be, but there's got to be some person that we can point to as far as QA in the factory. Construction plans will have to have a plan review and approval. Inspection will be required for each stage of construction, except for the certifieds as we get to that. Completed units will receive a state insignia that will include snow load, wind load, and other information based on what is submitted in the design plans. So that's something else this industry's got to think about, what they want to build to for snow load, wind load, and winter design temps. Every unit will require an installation handbook. It doesn't mean that it's going to be installed, but at some point you should have an installation handbook that travels with that unit on how they want to install the electrical and plumbing and maybe foundation hookups, right? Factories that also sell tiny homes will be required to be registered sellers. And that's going to drive you guys to a surety instrument, a bond, letter of credit, or CD. Just remember that there are ways to, we talked last time, there was concerns about keeping the deposits in an escrow account. You can use that deposit money for the cost of producing the unit. And there's ways in the administrative rules to do that. So be sure and look at those very carefully. Nate has offered to share his bonding company with anybody that wants it, but there is a whole bonding industry out there that can support you also. If your unit has AC items, an AC inspection will be required, and it's been put on a temporary or permanent foundation, then you'll need the local permits and an installation inspection. Units sold by you and at some time in the future want to be put on a temporary or permanent foundation will have to follow that MHIP, the Manufactured Home Installation Program. I need to confer with Donnie on this a little bit, but if they have that installation handbook, that is the route to go through to follow that MHIP. So this would be if it's sold down the road and has the state insignia on it and it wants to be installed. Donnie, you got some comments on that?
Yeah, I guess my questions to Tracy and the other tiny home builders. For this product, do you have an installation manual already developed? For
Well,
these
that's what I
products?
that's what I was going to bring up. Why I raised my hand. I don't have an installation manual because the customer comes and picks up their house, hitches up to a truck and leaves off into La La Land with a 50 amp electrical cord and a septic sewer hose and a water hose, and they go off to somewhere and they connect the water hose, they connect the sewer hose, and they plug in the electrical cord. Other than letting down your stabilizing jacks, I'm not really sure what else would be required for installation. You guys educate me.
So Tracy, that's a really good point. There is an option in our in legislation, and I believe in the administrative rules, Donnie, for a homeowner to do the installation themselves. And so there, I'll double check and find the reference on that.
Yeah, so you can install a home yourself, but there's still a standard that they install it to. So
yes,
that's going to be probably the biggest part for factories, because if the factory doesn't have an installation manual for that unit, we would use ours. But would ours really make sense to use for the tiny home product? You know, another route you can probably do is get an engineered designed installation for that home. At least for
Donnie, I think you're exactly right. You bring up a really good point, and so did Tracy. I think it would behoove the industry to have a installation handbook, and it can be fairly simple, I think, Tracy, on if you want to assign, if you want to put our tiny home on a temporary foundation, here's a page of things that you need to know. If you want to put it on a permanent foundation, here's what you want to know. Here's and it wouldn't have to be that complex, but that would actually help solve some of the consumer education concerns on how to do these things that they're not going to be able to know offhand.
Sam, does that mean that I mean, we're supposed to have professional installers, right? Like, doesn't this start to, I mean, I don't know. I need to think about this a little bit, because if the customer takes their code and goes, cord and goes off, I can write an industry handbook. The team can come up with this. I can reach out to the builders. We can do that. That's not going to be a hard thing, but it's going to be a couple of bullet points. Seriously.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Tracy. We've already got people that in the tiny home industry, if I understand right, that are using professional haulers to move their units around, right?
Yes, we are.
They don't have the truck. There are professional, I mean, there are installation registered and certified installers that can do the same thing for them.
Which is what we do right now.
Yep. And it can also be the owner, if he's comfortable in doing it himself, right?
And honestly, Sam, that's usually the way it goes. I mean, truthfully, right? These tiny housers, they're the ones that are plugging in their electrical cord and their septic when they get to their RV park.
Donnie, I cut you off. I think you've got something else, and then I'll go to Nate.
Nick, go ahead and go first. I think it's kind of, I just wanted to kind of talk about what Tracy was saying about the installers.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna say the same thing you were. Is so you have to realize what type of, if you're taking your tiny home out and you're not attempting to install it to the foundation semi-permanent interaction with the local building department to hook up to utilities and all that kind of stuff, you just put the thing wherever you want, and you don't need an installer to do that at all. It's really just if you're going to be utilizing the codes and the standards of this program because you want a house to be CO'd by a local or hook up to the sewer system or whatever that could look like. And yes, the homeowners can do it themselves. But and so it's not that we need a standard on how to hook this thing up when you roll into an RV park, because the RV park installation may or may not fall underneath this program. But if you're going to put it on a foundation or install it, how all the variations that we have, that's where the installation manual needs to come into play. That would be my guess.
So Nate,
Yeah.
do you create like a, I'm sorry, but do you create like a general
Yes.
manual? Because from what I understood, it was all based off of local jurisdiction of where you were placing it on who was dictating how I install it.
No, and so like in the manufactured housing world, or the modular world, we have an installation manual that comes from the factory that's general, right? These are the tie downs that you have to do. These are it's a manufactured home. You have to have, anchors every 6
Sure.
feet, all the various things. And then and then real specifically, and this is something for the Division of Housing to answer, is that in the modular world, if the manufacturer does not provide one, then the state has standards that we revert to.
Yeah,
And
so that's what I was saying, that I don't know if our manual would actually be applicable to some of these.
It
structures,
wouldn't
but-
be, yeah, but like my
Yeah.
point is we might have to add a tiny home section for the state default standards.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Donnie. We added a couple pages for tiny homes.
Yeah, because if you look at our statutes, it actually says that a installation manual, needs to be provided for the installer to install that structure. So it's either through the factory or it's going to be through the Division of Housing. So preferably the factory, because the factory installation manual will be specific to the product, right? Ours are going to be, it's going to be a general installation manual that it was designed to really fit all types of modulars, HUDs, and mobile homes. So it's something that we're gonna have to look at a little more in depth, but it's definitely something we're gonna have to get going soon, especially since this is gonna take effect in June. So we'll probably have to get together and go over those standards as well.
Yeah, Donnie, I assume that once we finish the final draft on these rules, we're gonna have to go through all the MHIP and everything else just to make sure that it's all right. So, all right, Robin, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, I just, thanks, Sam. I just wanted to bring out that one of the considerations is to keep the house movable, and that if there is an installation requirement, and let's say you pick your house up and go to Arizona and you come back and forth with that, would a licensed installer be required to install it back in place, or would it be a temporary foundation be sufficient, so that it'd be more like you disconnect the water, sewer, and electric, and jack these things up and pull it away? So I just wanted to throw that out there, that the movability is something else to be considered. And when you're thinking about an installer, would an installer be needed every year when you bring it back?
So that's going to be interesting. I think that it's going to depend on the local jurisdiction and how long they allow temporary. If it's being used in RV and moving twice a year, that's one thing, Robin. If it's a year here and then a year there, or it comes in and it was sold 2 years ago and it's the first time. Again, the homeowners can always do that, but that's going to really tie back. That's why I really think this installation handbook is really important to travel with the home. Stick it in a drawer, tie it down underneath the kitchen sink, whatever it is, that whoever owns that home in the future knows how to install it. And I don't care if you guys, if the tiny home industry also comes up with, here's how a sheet that says, here's how to install in an RV park. I don't care. I'm not looking at it. The only thing I'm going to look at is, do you have installation for a temporary foundation and a permanent foundation handbook in a fact sheet or in a handbook that also meets the wind and snow loads and design temp for that unit? And so I think everybody's hands went down.
Byron's hand
I
is
just
still
wanted
up.
to talk about the chat real quick. Tracy, I'll come back to you.
Byron's hand is still up, Sam.
I'm sorry?
Byron's hand is still up. Are you there, Sam?
I'm not seeing any hands. Whoever has their hand up can talk.
Okay, Byron has his hand up.
Hi, Byron, go ahead.
Hi there. In regards to an installation manual, it seems that if you have to have a licensed certified installer placing it, it shouldn't be the burden of a tiny home builder to provide an installation manual because the professionals that are installing it would know how to do it. So I think having to create that on our part doesn't seem quite appropriate. You know, to date, I've been really happy when the tiny home rolls out of my gate because the homeowner is then responsible for everything from that moment forward, as far as placement, as far as getting whoever they need to place it. And I'd sure like to not see an extra burden be placed on the builders of having to be responsible for you know, the place, anything to do with placement if we have professionals that are required to install it. That's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
So Byron, thank you. So currently every factory is required to have an installation handbook. And those professional installers are using that handbook to make sure that they do the installation correctly per the manufacturer's construction. Everything from a 3-unit box or 4-unit, 4 boxes being tied together with respect to the marriage lines and everything else. So those professionals really are not coming up with their own requirements for individual units. They are following the factory instructions. So I
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yep. I'm just trying to make it clear that if the installers don't have a installation manual or handbook with the unit, then the state will require them to use the MHIP, which is, if you guys and Mike put a link to that in the chat, there's a lot of good information on that, but it's a fairly complex document. All right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to jump to, oh, sorry. Tracy, did you have a comment?
I lowered my hand because I felt like the conclusion is this: as a manufacturer builder, you either create your manual or you go with the state, what is provided. So if you're not going to create your own manual, then understand that your customers are going to be accountable to the state's installation process.
But currently it is a factory requirement to have one.
Okay, we'll get it done.
Okay.
If they don't ever change, once you guys make one, it's gonna just stay in place for years. You know, like they're not dynamic. Yeah.
I'm just, it's probably, I'm going to go look at what you guys already have because I haven't reviewed it, and we'll just create something.
Yeah. Now, if that unit gets lost, or this unit is built in another state that comes into the Colorado without a Colorado insignia on it, then it'll have to follow MHIP for installation on a temporary or permanent foundation. All right, cool. Donnie, last word, Donnie.
Yeah, just real quick, it kind of goes off of what Nate was saying with the factory developing the manual, is that it's going to be there for a while unless you change your product and it needs a different type of installation, right? But at the end of the day, if you require the installer to develop a installation plan for that structure, that's going to be an end cost for the homeowner, right? And I think that's the last thing you want to do is start making all the homeowners pay for engineered designs to install your product. If you can already just get that one manual developed for all your products, and then they use that one manual to install their products.
Good point, Donnie. And let's remember that Colorado has a lot of different soil types. And I don't think your installation handbook has to cover them all. But the local jurisdiction may want to do, may have local requirements for temporary and permanent foundations. And I don't know that you can design one for every single jurisdiction in the state. All right, let's jump ahead. All right, we talked a little bit about certified factories. So let's talk about, and I mentioned already that we're looking at an overhaul of the certification program. We understand that third-party agencies also certify factories in other states. And so we'll be on a fast track to roll out some proposed rules on that. Our intention at this point in time is to replace the current state certification process with a third-party independent certification process and hold those third parties responsible for enforcing that continuing quality control of the certification process. And then we'll be updating the criteria for third parties in the rules to also use in order to certify factories as a type of service that the third party agency provides. Any questions or comments on this one? Okay. And I'm working closely with those third-party agencies, but just to put you guys on notice, I've got about a week to finish this up. So I need those proposed rules done very, very quickly. All right. I think I reordered the agenda, but didn't reorder all my slides. So let's talk about this one real quick. The new name for alternative construction. Does anybody have? I know that Janine, you had your hand up.
I vote for on-site compliance.
On-site, thank you, Janine. One vote for on-site compliance.
I like that.
So OC, is anybody else?
Works for me.
Compliance or completion?
Here we go. Compliance or
Compliance.
Compliance. I agree. I like compliance. Now that you, yeah. Okay.
I think the compliance covers the completion. It's not
Yeah.
compliant till it's completed.
Okay.
It's very different from AC and OC. I like that. Totally different.
Right. Yes. Totally different. Nobody's going to ask what it means at all now.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody will ask at all, right? Nate?
Doesn't HUD call it site compliance? Is it site compliance? And then they have AC, which is alternative.
Gosh, we covered that the other day. I don't
Yeah, I
remember that
believe
one.
it's SC site compliance. If you look at the HUD on-site construction requirements.
Well, do we
I think
want to
they
name
call
it the same
SC.
thing as HUD? Because then we're.
No, we don't. I'm just saying that the different names that are out there. I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
So you're thinking, Donnie, site compliance with an S?
Well, I think that's how HUD labels theirs, the site compliance items. Yeah, I just want to make sure that whatever we choose, it's not confusing, because we tell locals that anything that's on site constructed is within their jurisdiction, right? Unless it's an AC item. But if we start calling our stuff on site construction items, it might confuse locals. So whatever we choose, let's just make sure that it's not overlapping what we tell locals, what's within their jurisdiction.
Okay. You got a recommendation, Donnie?
No, I think on-site compliance would work, but also on-site factory compliance would probably be better, because it's directly factory related. Not like a on-site built garage, which is a on-site product, I guess.
Okay. So what's everybody think of on-site factory compliance?
Sounds great. I think it's still, whatever you do, it's gonna be confusing, so I wouldn't spend a ton of time thinking you're gonna make it not confusing, but.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Janine, you got.
Janine, your hands up?
I'm not, no, but I see Janine's hand up.
I would still say on-site compliance, because all of the items that are being inspected are on-site.
Mhm.
I think that the locals, I think it'd be clearer for the locals at that point that they need to inspect those items, whether it's a dormer, whether it's,
Furnace, that's what-
whatever it happens to be. I think on-site compliance keeps it cleaner. Just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Janine. There's a vote in the chat for on-site modular compliance.
No.
Yeah, I don't even think tiny homes would be considered modular, would they?
Right,
They're
that's,
considered tiny
yeah,
homes, yeah. So just in case there is a product that is tiny home on-site compliance, we don't want to exclude those.
I like Eric's comment. Anything beats alternative construction. Byron, thanks for coming as long as you could. All right, I'm seeing a groupthink toward on-site factory compliance, and if everybody's okay, that's what we're gonna do. If
yeah.
you're
it's-
morally and physically opposed to it, let me know.
Moving on.
All right. Woo-hoo. You guys just made my day. All right, let's talk a little bit. Does anybody need a 5 or 10 minute break, or do we want to keep rolling?
Yes, please.
Janine, I am with you. We're gonna stop for 5 minutes. We're not gonna stop the recording. You guys can talk about anything you want. Let me make sure. Oh, James McLean has joined the meeting. James, I'm sorry I didn't see your in there now, but I just promoted you to panelist. Let's take 5 minutes or no more than 10 and we'll get back. Thank you. Do we have most everybody back?
I'm not sure. Hey, Sam, I did want to ask one thing about these AC or OSC or OC items. Can we discuss what these items should be? Because I think there's different thoughts on what those would be, kind of based off the conversation we had last week. Let's say, for instance, some factories, they don't finish the plumbing underneath the floors, and all they do is stub out plumbing through the floors, and then they finish the rest of the plumbing out at the site location. Or gas lines, or let's say cap trusses, piggyback trusses, right?
Sure,
Things
we
like
can have
that.
discussion, as long as it's not
Well-
real.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
But
Or
yeah,
at
I
least
feel like we
maybe
should do
save
that
for-
offline.
Maybe, yeah, save for offline, or maybe another tack. Do we have, I think, what, 2 more left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Donnie, we really only have one more to make any changes to. So by the 14th, we can talk about some of those OFC things.
And I think that'd be an important thing to talk about.
Okay.
And so that we can actually clarify or at least put it in rule.
Yeah.
What to exclude. I think it'd be like a general list of things, because every scenario is different, but at least have a good idea of what would be on-site compliance. Because that would give the locals, let's say, I don't know about Eric or Tim, or even James, but have you guys ever done a plumbing plan review for a home that came into your jurisdiction without plumbing underneath the floors? It'd be hard to believe that they did, because they probably thought that was already part of the state's plan review process.
Well, and I will say, Donnie, I like the concept of including items, or if you want the Division of Housing's oversight and review to take precedence, you have to include the item on an AC list. If you don't include it on an AC list, then the plan review then is under the jurisdiction of the local. I like that. It's actually the first time we've ever had kind of that logical thought. And so I like that component of it. I think everybody is more okay with that, with the conversations about inspection resources, that we had. And so I think that, what you're saying is, like, should we come up with a list of which items are items that can be thrown on either side of the fence? Is that kind of what you're saying from the standpoint of
maybe have a standard of what is going to be those on-site compliance items, right? HUD has one, right? They have a list of items that they consider site construction items.
Okay.
So I think we should have something similar, like I said, to kind of draw that line, so that it's not.
That line being things that have to be AC, or that line being things that are allowed to be AC?
So
and
Nate,
not
the way I would look at is say, these are typically AC items, or these are examples of AC items, and these are examples of not AC items.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that need to be called on plan, because there's always going to be a one-off, and we're not going to capture everything.
Agreed. Yeah, right. But the idea is basically if you make it an AC item, the review jurisdiction goes to Division of Housing still.
It's OFC now, Nate.
Well, yeah, the other thing,
OFC.
Yeah.
This shit changed a minute ago.
yeah, the other thing, Nate, is that the actual statute changed, so that the 2432-3311, the A.7, it no longer says items shipped from the factory. It
Agreed.
says any item. So
That's
has along
allowed
with that
the
for sure.
logic that, yeah,
Yeah.
that's allowed the logic that we're promoting now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tim?
Yeah, I'll start out by calling it the new name, the OC.
OFC.
OFC.
Or is it AC? I'm confused.
No, it's OFC.
On-site factory compliance.
OFC. Right.
OMG, it's OFC, IMO.
That was good, Mike.
I'm gonna vote for SC. I like that. No, just kidding. But in the interest from a local jurisdiction, I think I like the idea. You get into laundry list and you get into some potential problems of, well, this isn't on the laundry list. And we talk about that with a lot of code change stuff in the regular codes. But with that being said, that might be helpful. But when it comes to the local AHJ, having that list of items, available, then that's going to make it a lot easier, at least from an inspection standpoint, of what my inspectors would be looking for versus, who else is going to be looking for. So I think that that's the important part of kind of tying it together with the local.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll come up with some type of example list and include that someplace. And we'll take a look at the rules real close too and see where we are on those. All right, so this is the slide that we stopped on, the factory bonding and deposit requirement. This is new for factories and out of HB 22-1242. And so the underlined, and so first I give you the statute that is in there, 2432-3311. And then I highlighted I underlined the new requirements that came out of HB 22-1242. So it starts with A3, that the manufacturer of factory built structures to be installed in the state shall register with the division as provided in board rules, subject to enforcement action, including suspension or revocation of their registration. Contained in this part 33 and board rules, a manufacturer shall, 1, comply with the escrow requirements of down payments as established by the board rule, and 2, provide a letter of credit, CD, or a surety bond. A financial institution or authorized insurer shall pay the division the letter or the financial instruments if a court of competent jurisdiction has rendered a final judgment in favor of the division based on a finding that A, the manufacturer failed to deliver, B, the manufacturer failed to refund a down payment toward the purchase of a factory built structure, or C, the manufacturer ceased doing business or filed for bankruptcy. So that's the new wording. And there's 3 bullets under here that I think we need to discuss briefly, and that is this is the same requirement as it is for sellers. Sets the bond at $50,000 plus any amount over that collected as deposits or down payments, except for portions sent to the manufacturer, we assume for construction costs and nominal sales promotion to hold a pricing level. So we're not double dipping here. It is not the intent of the state to double dip and require 2 deposits or 2 bonds for a single deposit. This would be if the factories are getting a significant amount of the deposit money. if the legal intent is to cover down payments to the factory before they're used for construction purpose, then this rule can be fairly simple to write. And factories that are direct sellers to the public are also required to be registered sellers. Does that make sense to everybody?
Sam, it's Tracy. I'll just say I have to absorb this, right? Because this is a lot. This is new for us.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to understand it and figure it out, and that's fine. What I do see here is this will, you know, be applicable towards somebody like Tiny Building Experts that wants to, you know, comply with the state rules. However, if you have builders out there that are only going to continue to build RVs to RV standard, then all of this is null and void, and they can continue taking people's money and never build a house, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
That's bad.
Yes, well, you're absolutely right, Tracy. That is correct.
So this is only applicable towards us people in the state that want to do it correctly? That's what it feels like.
It's
It's a fair comment.
Yes, Tracy, that is what statute tells us that we have to do. Now, most people get, on the seller side, most people get a single $50,000 bond. And I believe what I've heard the cost is about $200 or $300.
Yeah, no problem.
And then you as a factory would be able to dedicate whatever percentage of that you need for construction materials, but you may want to keep that money. Well, you've got the bond, but you know, if you're requiring, yeah,
Sam, it's rough. It's rough because, you know, the companies that are here that are wanting to do things correct. And there are companies in the state that are not doing things correctly and haven't participated in this at all.
I know.
And so it's more along the lines of, yeah, we're going to do this. I'm going to go. I've got the link from Nate, other builders that want to do it the right way. We're going to do it. And we're going to follow it. We're already, you know, allocating money appropriately. We don't rob Peter to pay Paul. Otherwise it'll get you in bad position. So any of the good businesses, they're going to comply. But unfortunately, if you have a tiny house builder in the state of Colorado that is going to continue just to build RVs and just get RV certification, this is going to change nothing for them. It's actually holding me accountable, which is fine. I don't mind.
And
but
that's
it's not really solving the real problem, though. The real problem, though, Sam, is those builders that are not doing it right. This is not touching them still.
Right. And so Tracy, there's two things I want to respond to, and that is I can only do what my statute tells me I can and can't do. And they will continue to be tiny homes built to RV standards. That's absolutely true. The opposite end of this is that I have factories that build hundreds of units, and they've never had to do this before too. And if they cancel a unit, then it's keeping track of all those units coming in and keeping track of what they get. My guess is that most of them only take what they need for construction, but there may be some that are getting more of that. The accounting on that's going to be kind of tough too. I understand that every factory is using the down payment money for
Expenses,
materials and expenses. And it can be overhead, right? It can be salaries, it can be whatever it is. But this is the requirement in state statute. Mike, I think I saw your hand up first.
Yeah, so kind of on this end, the rule for the sellers is the $50,000 bond. The rule for the manufacturer is that you comply with escrow and get a bond. But what is the what is the bonding requirement again in here? I guess I'm trying to,
Sam, can I go?
I'm sorry, repeat the last part of that question.
well, the bond, I guess it's just trying to figure out, is there a specific amount of bonding required? Is that what we're saying here, or it's?
Not in statute. I don't think,
No.
there's not a specific amount in statute. So we
So
have
what-
the flexibility, we as the TAC have the flexibility to set this rule the way we want to. But the intent is if a factory cancels a home and has taken a down payment or a portion of a down payment and then cancels that construction, that money goes back to the buyer of that unit. Nate, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so we talked about this the other day briefly, and the consensus was that this is a pretty hard one to comply with from a factory standpoint.
Yes, we did.
The issue is that we have to address it because it is in statute. And this is the first time we've ever addressed the factory side of this. We've addressed it on the seller side for years. And so the idea that I have to get past the requirement and have something until we figure this out a little bit better is basically to say that a factory must provide a bond for $50,000 to the Division of Housing, just like the sellers use against $200. Super easy to do. And then if you are collecting deposits above and beyond that 50, just like the sellers, you're supposed to increase the bond amount. However, and the very, very, very key piece is that if you have expenses that are associated with that deposit, it no longer is, those expenses are not classified as a deposit. And so if you take a deposit and you apply some of that to engineering and drafting, and you apply some of that to material purchases, and you apply it to whatever it is you want to apply it to, it is no longer considered a deposit. If it's going to sit in your bank account unapplied, then it is a deposit. But that ability to maintain and track that deposit total that you have is in your administration. That's how we think we can kind of implement this in a way that doesn't really get into restricting the working capital required, that deposits represent for factories.
And then so is that what you guys want me to write as a rule, or do you want to propose language for that? Mike, Nate, and Tracy, I see you've got your hand up.
Well, I mean, I only wanted to say what Nate just described is exactly it. Like if I take a deposit for somebody, it's because I've got to pay a designer and I've got to start ordering a trailer and things that are 16 weeks out. But if I'm taking a deposit from somebody that's not going to be in my build schedule for a year, then that should sit in the account and I could be able to, administratively account for that correctly.
Right.
That's what I heard you say, Nate, and I feel like that's very doable because we are small. We don't have like what you have, right? Like you guys have hundreds of houses going on. We only have a couple. You know what I mean? So it's a lot easier to track that.
So basically, we kind of would say a line that basically says something like, amounts excluded from deposit requirements are, and then we just kind of list off, any engineering drafting fees, any material purchases, any whatever, we have and that's the same how it works on the seller side right now, but we'll write a list that's a little bit more factory type expense items. And then you get to subtract all those items, basically.
Makes sense.
And Tracy, your example of something not in the queue for a year is a perfect example.
That's what we're trying to protect against is
And I
a
wish I
factory
would've
that
thought of that.
collects
But I completely
$500,000. Yeah.
I completely respect that. I have personally shied away from collecting deposits because I did not want to go down that path. But at a certain point you have to, and it's got to sit there for a little bit, you know what I mean? Until you get them queued up. So, but I don't think what you guys are proposing is bad, Sam. I think it's good and doable. it should be done.
I just
And so-
think, like we talked about the other day, Nate, well, however we write this, it can't be so complex as to
No.
not be enforceable, because then we'll be right back to, I mean, it could be super complicated and very, revolving kind of
Onerous, yeah.
amounts and stuff, but then there'll be really no way to try to track or enforce compliance, and it won't really do anything.
Yeah, the rules on the seller side, they're fairly complex, and very tough to understand. For example, and we're going to provide some more clarification on that side too, but I think we can, so what I'm hearing is a consensus that a single $50,000 bond, except for if you take deposits for stuff that is not that's in a long production queue, that you're not
Yeah.
drawing on yet, right?
And our current process, just on the seller side, is that when we renew our registration, we currently sign an affidavit stating that the balance of our deposit has not increased over our $50,000 bonding amount in the past year. So that basically certifying that the $50,000 is adequate to cover. And so, what's the word? Like it's self-regulating as far as if you need to increase the 50, you're the one that had to identify that and do that.
And unfortunately, whatever we do, if people have strong financial wherewithal at the factory level, they'll comply, and you won't have a problem. If somebody doesn't, then in the end, if something happens and there's a failure or default, people will be harmed by it. And I don't know that there's any good way to, whatever we write here, I'm just not sure, in the event of someone that doesn't have a high level of financial wherewithal, it would be hard to really hard code in something to protect against that. It's unfortunate, but I think that's true.
That's true.
And that's true on the seller side too, though, Mike, to be honest. There is a caveat, not a caveat, but someplace in the administrative rules that says that we will review the accounts every 2 years. I don't know that we've done that yet, but we may start randomly doing it. And it'll be a learning process for everybody that we deal with at the state. So we'll take, my goal is to start taking a look at some of that and just ask for a compliance check at some point. And see how that works, and then see how we need to tweak the rules going forward.
So I will propose the factory version of that, and if everybody's okay with that.
Yep. Thank you, Nate. I thought you were raising your hand to be the first one that I audited.
Come on.
All right. The next slide talks about plan reviews and third parties. Again, this is a new process that we're working on too. Currently, my question here is, does construction start when a third party or DOH approve the plan? And then another couple comments, what does a QC program look like that ensures plans are thoroughly reviewed prior to construction authorization? And then the discussion of Division of Housing final stamp and timetable for pre-approved plan sets. So I think we're going to have some open discussion on this. Anybody want to kick it off? Oh, good, Nate.
Figured you might want me to do this. So,
and then we'll go to Margarita afterwards.
So the idea here, and so John Meyer, who I don't know if John's on today, is he?
I haven't seen him.
Yeah, I don't think he is. John Meyer, TAC member from, John's here. John, do you want to, I'm happy to do it, but do you want to talk about this? Because I know, you proposed some language that's been being kicked around.
No, John, I did see your name for a second.
That's okay. No, Nate, go ahead. Feel free, my friend.
Okay. So essentially what, right now happens at the Division of Housing is that the require DOH requires a free review of the plans by a third-party review company. And that is to kind of make the effort to work out the kinks, deal with corrections, deviations, redlining with a third-party agency. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6, kind of notable third-party review companies out there in the engineering review industry that are familiar with, modular, in your case, tiny home type projects. And they provide a review. At that point, then, once it is pre-reviewed or pre-approved, I don't know what terminology we want to use there, it then goes to the Division of Housing to be final approved is how I would describe that. Division of Housing is the one that holds the stamp that everyone needs on their set of prints. And so one of the things that is in our current rules is that once the plans are pre-reviewed or pre-approved by the third party, the factory is allowed to begin construction. That's what's in there today. We propose keeping that. And through, the process, so years ago in the rules, there used to be a requirement that plan review at the Division of Housing level would be required within 10 days. That disappeared at some point in time. And so that is no longer in rule. But what we were proposing was that we institute that rule back into the requirements, but the difference is now we are providing the Division of Housing with a pre-reviewed or pre-approved set of plans from a third-party review company. And so what's been proposed is basically something where if you turn in your pre-approved prints, Division of Housing has 10 days to either give them the final approval or provide comments back if they obviously have any jurisdiction to do that. And then if that's the case, then you have to reply to those comments. But that allows factories with a pre-approval to feel comfortable beginning construction because they know that they are going to get feedback on a final approval within 10 days versus within stringing it out to say a month or two. And so that's kind of what we've been proposing.
Okay, Margarita?
Yeah, so to start with, I have a question for Nathan. So this is for the modular houses, right? So is how many houses are built using one set of drawings or one approved set of drawings?
Oh, Margarita, I can answer that.
Donnie, yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you are building for the same location, so same region, same jurisdiction, it doesn't have to be, you're not going to build the same home for the same site address, but if it's in the same jurisdiction, there's no code changes. You can build for that same jurisdiction, multiple homes off the same plan or multiple structures off the same plan. But if you are to build let's say a lot model that can go anywhere in Colorado, it really depends on where it's going because, we have different climatic and geographic design criteria in the state of Colorado. So that plan may not be able to go, up to like Fraser or Aspen, right? It might only be able to go to somewhere like Weld County. The other thing that is a big consideration of that is the energy code compliance with the winter design temp. So, but in general, you can build multiple structures off the same plan as long as it's going to the same area. It can't, be designed for multiple jurisdictions unless you include that in your details. So, let's say you wanted to build just for the western, or not western. Let's say you want to build for the eastern plains, and you had the most strict design criteria on there for those areas. And then you had maybe like a table that said, if it's going to this location, this structure has to be designed with using this winter design temp or it's going to be designed to meet this snow load or designed to meet this wind speed. So it's a complicated process, and that's why a lot of factories don't do that. They just go with a site location plan review. But we do also have some places that are building developments that have multiple houses going in one location. And so you know, they can build multiple houses using that one plan set.
So the plan review is going to be only for the modular homes, or are we going to include the tiny homes as well?
Well, so it should include any product that's come to the state of Colorado, right? Other than HUD and mobile homes.
So yes, tiny homes as well.
Yes, tiny homes as well.
So that's what I see a little bit of a difficulty, as long as we, tiny homes are going to move to start with. And second, some of them, if not all of them, are customized. We do have models, but many are customized. So when we just start customizing a given model, the plans are going to change, right? Drawings are going to be adapted to that. So every time we'll have to produce a new set of plans to get through the county where the house is going to be set to start with. I mean, to be set for the first time. I mean, what will
come
be
through the state?
Yes,
not
yeah,
the
obviously.
county. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be approved by the state, not knowing if it's going to Frisco or to Greeley, right?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't really fully hear you on that. Say that again.
Our plans are going to be certified or reviewed by the state, correct? Not
Yes.
knowing if that house is going to go to Frisco or Greeley.
No,
correct?
it has to have a site location or a region that it's going to, because that's the only way we
It
can do our
has to
plan
be
review,
assigned.
right? At the time
Yeah.
that you submit, it has to be on that plan. So that'd be the only way we can review it, because we wouldn't know what criteria to review it to without knowing the location.
And that's gonna be the tough part, Margarita.
That's confusing, guys.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't see how we're gonna tell the clients, this house is only for Greeley and 5 is zone, weather zone, but not for Frisco or 6 and above weather zones. You know what I mean? It's gonna be complicated.
Well,
trying
this is
to
where
draw up.
And this is where
Right.
unethical business practices start to get developed, because people will then, if they're not, if I can't tell you, my tiny house is going to a certain spot, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to go travel in the state of Colorado. I'm going to go everywhere. But if I have to be confined to a certain area, then why wouldn't I just pick Pueblo or
Mobile
somewhere
home.
where it's warm and just tell you that, but that not be the truth. I was hoping that this would help us get to a point of lack of manipulation. We want to be honest and ethical, and we're not promoting these people to be honest and ethical in this answer.
The problem will be is if we can't accept an unknown location, because we're gonna be looking at wind and snow loads and winter design temps to go on those insignia.
What if
And
I built it in
Maybe-
Colorado Springs, Sam, right? If I built it in Colorado Springs and the customer says, yeah, I'm going to be around here in Colorado Springs, and that's the information that we give, but 2 months down the road, they end up on the Western Slopes in Delta. Then what?
Yeah. So when you talk, we've had conversations about trust in the past, right? And the general idea is to be able to trust what the sellers, what the factories, and what inspectors are doing. If the factory is going to lie about that, which some may, right? But at the end of the day, wherever it's getting installed, the inspector who's doing the inspection is going to verify that structure is suitable for that location, right? The locals are also going to be looking at the plan and saying like, hey, this structure doesn't meet our design criteria. And they're going to raise that to our attention and say like, hey, we have this structure that was approved for Colorado Springs, but now it's located in Fraser or Aspen where the snow loads are higher, and they can't accept it because it doesn't meet their minimum design criteria, right? So,
And so, yeah, having that winter design criteria is going to help your customers with the local jurisdictions. So, and there was a comment from Nate, design to the highest possible. I think you design to what the customer tells you to design to. And then
Right, but if you're looking for a standardized approval, so you can build a house and sell it anywhere and have a set of plans that are pre-approved. I realize Donnie will have to talk about people giving locations or whatever. If you build it to the highest standards, you can sell it anywhere if you get that design approved. But if you do want a lower design standard, you're going to have to say it's being delivered here, and that's what DOH will review it to.
Yeah, the
To a
problem
certain
with that is
extent.
that it increases the cost of the house. If we build it for zone B, it definitely increases the cost of the house, not knowing where that house is going. That is what I see, just question marks, or where we are raising those prices that's supposed to be affordable.
Well, let me kind of do an analogy here. Let's say, I don't like using vehicles, but let's say you use a vehicle. If you're a car manufacturer and you say you can take this anywhere, are you going to say that they can take that car off-road where maybe they need a higher suspension or higher design criteria to drive that vehicle off-road? Or, you're going to let them know that you're selling a certain product that's being used for a certain, I guess, use. And it's going to be the same for the tiny homes. If you're saying this, you can take this product anywhere in Colorado, well, you have to be able to design it to withstand everywhere in Colorado. You can't just say this could go anywhere in Colorado, but actually it's only designed to withstand winter design temps to, 5 degrees, right? But they might be taking it to a location that's negative 12 degrees, right? So there has to be some kind of, I guess, consistency with what you're saying and what you're selling and what you're producing. So if you're going to tell everybody that these products are made for everywhere in Colorado, you have to make sure that it's made for everywhere in Colorado. But the biggest factor, like the easiest thing to say is like build it to the highest standards. That's the easy way, right? But the problem is the energy code compliance, because not every single region is going to have the same climatic design criteria, right? They're also not going to have the same winter design temps. So these are things to consider when you're building these. Even in the RV industry, they have normal models and they have the models that have the winter package, right? They're saying that these products are the same as these normal packages, but these have upgraded insulation, upgraded, heating units, things like that, so that you can place them in locations that withstand those temperatures, right? So we have to deal with this on a modular level too, right? When people want to build lot models, that they're just building a specific product and it goes to a lot, and then the dealer has to sell it to somebody. So, but the sellers, I haven't ran into one yet that the seller sold a home to a person where it was not rated for that location. I did run into it once, but it was just a factory HUD unit that got a label that had a misprint on it, and it was actually designed for a higher criteria. But I haven't had a seller sell a home to a homeowner for a location that it wasn't allowed to be installed.
Yep. All right, let me run through my other list of hands. Mike, and then Sumit after that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Donnie's comments are pretty intriguing, because that's some of the discussions that we kind of kickstarted at the ASTM subcommittee about these pre-approved plans in the different regions, within a state, county, or local jurisdiction. Has anybody at DOH actually put together a matrix of the different zones or the different geographical requirements in terms of wind loading?
So there's at
snow
the end of
load?
a
Is that actually been done?
At the end of Appendix A, at the end of the administrative rules, there's a table of about 50 or 60 different design temps. So yes, we have looked at that. Does it cover all 323 jurisdictions in the state? Probably not. Mike Morrow?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, statutorily, since it's with the home rule on the wind load and snow load and stuff, at the end of the day, kind of hamstrung on some of this stuff by the fact that if the local jurisdiction, I think Donnie said this, if you go out there and it doesn't match, they're not gonna if it's not made for that area, whatever the DOH tries to say, I mean, technically the wind load and snow load is by law dictated by them. And we deal with that now, exactly as Nate stated and Donnie kind of alluded to. You build to the higher standard that you think you might have to deal with. And then in the end, if it's not made to comply with that local rule, snow load, wind load, or the energy compliance, I mean, on a house versus a tiny home could be a little tougher because small changes don't affect us as much, but typically, from one light climate zone to another, the res check really doesn't change dramatically, but that might not be true in a tiny home. But yeah, you kind of have to just deal with it. The model approval is challenging, but you can do it. It just has to be, it has to be built to be able to get in where it goes. I just wondered, Nate, back to your original comments on this, as far as the plan reviews go, the 10-day would be nice. Although the problem with the 10-day now is we have the whatever time it takes for the pre-approval with our third party, and then the 10-day at the DOH. And I guess I thought at one point when we had our call the other day, we talked about maybe having a rule or procedure of, where we would certify a third party to be able to approve these plans if they got to a point of significant compliance with the DOH. Because part of the problem we run into now is, even if we set the 10-day turnaround time, again, we've added the third party time frame. Now we have the 10-day, and if there's any deviation that could be of the most minor nature, if there's not if there's not a rule for the turnaround time on a deviation, the deviation in and of itself could wind up being, without any type of stated time frame for that, it could take its own 10 to 20 days, and then you're getting into the what we deal with now when we explain to people that it could be 30 business days by the time we add all these together. So
Yeah, so the issue with that is that right now in our statute, we are not allowed to, there is no pathway available for us to allow third-party review organizations to fully approve a set of plans. That's something that I think we're going to look at changing statutorily, but right now we can't allow, all they can get is, whatever we want to term it, a pre-approval or a pre-reviewed status. The final stamp today has to come from DOH statutorily.
Right. So then if that's the case, back to what I'm proposing, if you have a certified third party, then instead of being 10 business days, why do you need 10 business days just to, basically do a cursory review? Again, a renewal right now has always been 5 days because it's considered the same thing, a cursory review. I think 5 days would be more appropriate.
Yeah, Nate and Mike, John here, that some of the notes I've sent back to Sam, one's kind of written with, if the state's going to review it, I think I first proposed a 5-day review, much like it was on the second time turnaround. If the state had, points or wanted clarification or reviewed items after the first review. But what we're trying to do, Mike, is somehow get back to the point where, because we're giving them reviewed plans, we want to hold them accountable too, so that they're actually turning around, rather timely with these approvals, with their reviews, so that we can conduct business, like it was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and John, I don't disagree with that. I just think if we have a 10-day general turnaround time, maybe if someone gets to the point of being certified, could that be 5 days then? Well, because if you have no deviations on a regular basis over the course of, let's say, 10 to 20 plans, at what point shouldn't that just be a renewal time frame? That's all I'm saying. So
right,
we want to write it back in at 10 days, but then I think the next step is to say, okay, if there's no deviations going on at all or very little and they're not life threatening, then I say minimal amount of time at that second step.
Okay. Let me run down my list. Sumit?
Yeah, I'd be in, from a commercial standpoint, build standpoint, I'd be in favor of some sort of preliminary or pre-approval process. Oftentimes with our customers, our timeframes are very short, sometimes as low as 4 months. And it takes us probably 6 to 8 weeks sometimes, to just do a build of one of our equipment shelters. So, getting through some sort of preliminary process or temporary or pre-approval, to start the build would definitely be beneficial for us. And that could be it's maybe even something like just a PE approval. We have to go through the PE approval process, in order to do the build. And if we can get to something like that, just to start a build, that'd be fine as well. But I think some sort of pre-approval or preliminary process would be, that's something that I'd be in favor of as well. And if it's just a 5-day turnaround or whatever, that would be sufficient. But I think in our standpoint, since we have such short timeframes to complete our build, we need to get something rather quickly.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, Sam, to answer Tracy's question in the chat, that basically, okay, the vehicle maybe, but there is a class, they're called relocatable classrooms. They are used by the school districts. They are very common. If I build a 30-pound snow load, they are not able to go up to Boulder or anything. There is a note on there that says that this building cannot be placed in areas where the design criteria is exceeded. This would be the same for your tiny homes, Tracy. Basically, if you have a 30-pound snow load on a classroom and you move it to a 55-pound snow load, do you want your kids in there? I mean, I'm just asking the question.
Well, I hear what you're saying. We built a 70 to 120 snow load for the state of Colorado. So I hear what you're saying. And no, I wouldn't want my kids sitting in a bus that was only to 30 snow load if it's going somewhere. So no, I wouldn't. But I'll kind of hold my comments for the end because I kind of wanted to hear everybody else.
No. But to go to the other side of this, so what do the manufacturers do? They either design it for a specific criteria and a specific region, or they do worst case scenario, we call it worst case scenario, and they build it to the most extreme. Now, with Colorado having the climate zones that it has, if I build it for like a 7, it can work in the 6 and the 5. But if I build it for a 5, it's not going to work in the 6. That's just for the thermal envelope. But these snow loads and these wind loads are the governing for the design of these buildings.
Janine, you're next.
Thank you. I just wanted to give an example of something that happened in our jurisdiction just last week with a modular, but it points to the third-party pre-review before it comes to the state. We had a third-party pre-review, and it turns out they went through several iterations of it with NTA. And then when it got to the state to finally get the final stamp on it, it had the wrong design criteria. So I think the state still needs to review that just to catch those things that happen with whether it's a factory build or whether it's a tiny home build. Third party pre-review, plan review third party is not a catch-all. And I just wanted to reiterate that with an example of what we've had happen.
Janine, that's a perfect example. And I want to talk about a whole continuous improvement program in a little bit, but I think it's we need to give more constructive feedback to our third-party agencies on exactly what it is they're missing, and ask them to come back to us with a improvement program of their own. How are you not going to let this happen going forward? So to me, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that hard, but we'll try and get that figured out also. It's 11, just do a time check. It's 11:30. I can be done at noon very easily, but there are a few more slides to go through. So let's, does anybody have any final words on this slide before I go to a couple others?
Sam, I would like to address our current process and the original process before we head out.
Yes, please.
Okay, Tracy.
No, I would like to understand the current process as well,
Okay,
because
I'm sorry.
that'd
Go
be
ahead.
great.
So let me start with where Nate kind of left off with, how things were done in the past, where it was actually in our rules that the plan reviews would be done in a certain time frame. Now, that was taken out because, you know, if we didn't get it done in that certain time frame, now the state would be breaking the law, right? Because the law says the rules that are developed is what must be followed per the state, right? So it was taken out because if we got busy and we weren't able to turn around plans in the 10 and 20 business day, then the state would be in violation of the law. So that was taken out, right? And so I would hope we keep it out because we just never know what the workload's going to be, especially with the tiny home coming into place. We have one plan reviewer right now. We also have an FTE coming June 1st, and then also another term limited position for plan reviews to assist, right? So we just don't know what the workload is going to be. If we want to, you know, hold the state accountable, maybe we should push for more employees, but that's something that's going to be out of really my hands and in Sam's hands. It's something that's going to be need to be put through statute to increase our FTEs, right? But that process was changed, like I said. And then so following that change, what the new process is that it was more of an internal policy that residential plan reviews would be done in 10 business days, commercial would be done in 20 business days. And if you got a third party review, then it would be 5 business days, right? So I followed that process for a long time. And then just a couple of years ago, we started getting a big surge of plan reviews, but we were getting such a large group of plan reviews that were being resubmitted. We were resubmitting about 80% of our plan reviews, which helped create this backlog of plans that we had, right? Not saying that was the only reason, but that played a big part in our review timeline, right? If you're having to re-review, let's say we did 1,000 plans a year, and you're having to re-review 80% of those, you're doing a second review on 800 plans, and that's only a second review. It doesn't mean that there wasn't any third or fourth reviews, but if you're having to re-review 800 plans that year, it's going to build up pretty quick, right? And that was just for modulars. And now if we follow that same process with the tiny homes, it just increase, right? But once we seen that, we had to come up with a plan to help mitigate that issue with the resubmittal process. So we sent out a memo back in July of last year that said, hey, moving forward, everybody has to do a third-party plan review before submitting to us to help eliminate that resubmittal process, right? And then we would do the final approval by re-reviewing that plan to make sure that that third party did review to our state standards, right? So our codes, our amendments, and our rule, or, you know, the amendments that are in our rules, okay? And so we use that to help catch us back up to our original timelines. It's working, although a lot of factories don't see it. It is working. We went from over 100 plan reviews in our queue down to, I think we're at 24 right now. But let's say that we get back on track. We get back on track to the 10 and 20 business days. We had discussed moving it back to the original plan where you can submit to us for review, or you can have the choice of doing a third-party plan review, just so we can go back to the normal operations. But until then, we need a process to eliminate that amount of resubmittals that we're getting. Because it honestly, not every factory does it, but it was more like a shotgun approach. Like, hey, let's just give them these plans, and then hopefully it gets approved, right? Sometimes there were missing documents, like really simple things, missing documents. The wrong codes were on the plans, you know, things like that, right? Really simple things. And we were just having to resubmit them so they can get them back to us and with the right information. But until then, this is the process. You submit to the third party, get a preliminary review and approval. Once that plan gets to us, you have 10 business days. All we ask is 10 business days for residential and 20 business days for commercials. After you reach that checkpoint or that time frame, you can go ahead and start construction under the understanding that if there's any issues with that building, when we do the plan review, you are to fix that problem, right? At any stage that structure is at, right? But you're not allowed to ship that unit until you get the final approved set. And that's just due to the fact that if there is any deviations, you need to address them, right? So that is a current process. Now, moving forward, like I said, if we get back to our normal numbers, we can go back to what we were originally doing, that you can submit directly to us if you want, or you can use a third-party agency. So what we started doing last year in July is not permanent. It's just a temporary fix to a problem that we had with the plan review process of all the resubmittals in our backlog.
And
So-
so we do want to build that flexibility into our program going forward, and we want to build that quality control portion into it also, so that we don't have homes that are delivered into Park County with the wrong wind and snow loads. That we should be able to catch those and fix those. All right, so I see a couple hands, and then we got to move on, guys. Tracy, did you want something else on this?
Did I hear you guys say that basically if I'm a tiny house builder and I submit my plans to the DOH, that DOH has 10 days to give me my plans back? Is that what I heard?
I
Right
think that's
now,
what Nate was proposing, is that if.
No, you didn't hear that.
no, you didn't hear that.
I did not hear that. Okay.
That's what we want to get back to right now. We're requiring all factories to have a third party review their plans. And then we will stamp them. Our goal is 10 days once it gets cleared with the third party agency. Guys, if we had perfect plans being delivered at the factory level that make it through third party agency quickly, then we would be able to more quickly review these. You know, Mike Morrow said something the other day that really hit home to me. And that is that he's developing a very good relationship with his third party agency on plan reviews, and they've cut down the time frame and the number of resubmittals. We need to do that at the state level also. The key thing is if these plans were perfect every time they came through, we wouldn't have any problems. But we're not only on the third party agency catching stuff, but then we have resubmittals, and then they come to the state and we're still catching stuff. So we just need to do a better job of figuring out how to improve this process.
Sam, I was going to mention, so it sounds like I pay my designer to design my first set of plans. Now I hear you telling me I'm going to need to send my plans to a pre-review by a third-party company. So there's going to be a cost incurred now to have my plans reviewed by a third-party company. And then from that point, it will go to the DOH. As a tiny house builder, I don't want to send my plans to a third-party review to add extra costs for my customers. Why can't I just take my plans and send them to DOH and let there be a training process or some sort of, you know, continuous improvement process to give us that feedback? So LNI in the state of Washington experienced the exact same thing. The state of Washington went 2 years behind on plan reviews. And so they had to approve third-party, plan reviewers to help them to get caught back up. And you're right. It is important to have a good relationship with your third-party plan reviewer or DOH. Whatever I learn from you guys that's passed on to my designer will eliminate me making that mistake the next time I submit a plan.
And that's what we want, Tracy. We want to see better plans coming in, and we realize it'll be a training process up front. Looking, I can't see my attendee list anymore. So if there's people up there with their hands up, Robin, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks. Just wanted to point out that with tiny houses or tiny homes on wheels, we're talking about a non-complicated 400 square foot. And I was just wondering if there was a way to, I know you want to get to the point where you either use DOH or third parties, but in the meantime, if there was a way to move those through to the front of a big commercial project or something like that to grade the complexity of the plans review and maybe move the tiny houses through pretty quickly.
So Robin, I'm not real keen on allowing a segment of the industry to move ahead of a different segment of the industry. I think that opens up a whole can of worms. I do think that, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
I agree with you, Sam.
Mark, do you have your hand up? I guess not. All right. It is our goal to provide a very efficient revision, but you know, if we capture things that you could have a plan reviewed 10 times and probably every different reviewer could find something wrong. We need to take a look at figuring out how to review these plans efficiently. And that's, Donnie talked a little bit about the staffing challenges, but I think we're going to be able to be on top of that from our side pretty quick. All right. If people have any more comments on this or any of the other slides that we've talked about, please send them to me by email and we'll try to get them addressed. Talk a little bit about factory built field inspections. This is everything that goes on. We also, if you guys didn't know it, we do allow third-party agencies to perform AC and items, installations, inspections, and oversight, factory built oversight for non-certified factories. There is I think that's the way the current rules read. Also, installation inspectors. We have a separate that people can sign up just to be an installation inspector. We have that capability to also do that. And I think we've also talked about allowing those third-party agencies to install those insignia after AC or now OFC items are complete. So I want to tie this one in too, and then I'll talk about our continuous improvement program a little bit, and then we'll look at schedule and then we'll be done. So what the state wants is a very clear line of responsibility for correction of defects to units delivered to Colorado. And I just threw some examples up here. There could be a whole matrix of these, right? And maybe that's what we need to get to. But if a home is being built, delivered, installed, and a deficiency is found that could be tied back to the unit not being delivered per the construction drawings, to us, that's a factory requirement to correct. Number two, a home is built, delivered, installed, and OFC is completed by a contractor reporting to and paid for by the seller, and defects are found in the OFC process. It may or may not meet OFC construction drawings. Then who's the responsible party for that? The installer, the other, I'm sorry, not the installer, but the contractor that is reporting to the seller, or is it the factory? A home is built, delivered, installed, and there's a problem with installation that is contracted by the seller. Is that seller responsibility or the installation contractor? And then the number four could be the same as number three. Built, delivered, installed, and there's a problem with installation. With the installation contract is with the factory. This is a valid, I think, a valid concern for the state. The consumer do not know the difference on responsibilities between factories, installation, AC contractor, and seller. And we spend a lot of time at the state trying to sort that out, even on the HUD side on responsibilities. And I'm hoping to do more on that in the future. So I'll talk just briefly on our continuous improvement program, and then we'll cut everybody loose. There's 5 elements of this. One is staffing, the second is stakeholder meetings. The third is customer and stakeholder surveys, and then reporting, education, and training. For those of you who have not seen our staffing chart, this is what it looks like. We've got Donnie up here at the top, and then we have our senior plans examiner, and then we have 2 positions. One I'm close to getting, but it's authorized, but it's tied up in paperwork with OEDIT and Division of Housing and Department of Local Affairs right now. The other one we can start on 7/1. We have a new position that we've just made an offer and got an acceptance on an administrator 4 position that will work with our 3 program coordinators, Yesenia, Christina, and a TBD one that'll be doing primarily tiny homes. And then we currently have 3 inspectors, Robert, Kurt, and Frank, and a 4th one authorized on 7/1. So if you look at this, they're actually, and Donnie mentioned we have some temp help working right now with plan reviews along Greg's side. But there's the plans examiner position, the OEDIT position, that's 1, 2, the new one here, 4, 5, 6 new FTEs, almost doubling the number of staff that we've had in the past. I want to move to a stakeholder meeting, quarterly type scenarios where we actually get with the factories and invite them to a 2-hour teleconference, and we talk about what they're seeing in the field at the factory level that might be important to us. The same for sellers, installers, third-party inspectors, the local jurisdictions, state agencies, and the TAC. I know in the past you guys have been very forthcoming with your time and your commitment to the TAC, and you don't know how much we appreciate it. But I think a quarterly check-in might be a good thing for the TAC to kind of see how the latest rules are being implemented and any concerns that they might have. Surveys, I also want to do stakeholder group surveys, what's working, what's not, and what can we do better. And this will be anonymous surveys, probably compiled by a third party to kind of look at where we need to retool or readjust not only our rules, but our processes. Here's another one too, and we've talked about staffing a little bit, but I really would like, and Tawny and I have talked a little bit about this, what's our factory built projections for the next 3 years? And I know individual companies may want to share it, so that's why I alluded earlier to a third party type of survey where I don't see any of the individual numbers, but I'd really like to know what you guys are thinking over the next 3 years, what you're going to build. And knowing that it's going to change every single year because of economic conditions, personal company decisions, or whatever it may be. But I can't really build a staffing plan for the future unless I know what's planning to come into the state. And then taking a really good look at what actually came in the last year so that we know what we had and can compare it back out to those projection years, right? I want to do a little better job on being able to say how many plans actually require more than 1 review and how many plans require more than 2. The same for inspections. How many re-inspections are we having to do both at the factory level and the field level? And then what's our rolling average on plan review time? We know the numbers have been significantly down, but I'm hoping that I can tweak my software to actually print out some dashboards for me, or benchmark reports on how we're doing as a section within the Division of Housing. Education and training, we're going to continue what we currently do. We actually have a full day with the local jurisdictions for the Colorado chapter of ICC on tiny homes. So we're going to be spending a day on that. Rocky Mountain Home Association, we do sponsored training with them also. And then looking at new efforts, and I've talked about fact sheets for consumers, what's a tiny home, important information for tiny home factories, because it's a fairly new industry, and then maybe important information for building officials regarding DOH insignias and certificates of occupancy. So that's kind of it. My goal is to get a final draft, not a final draft, but a semi-final draft by the end of day on 3/7. Any final wording recommendations on the rules. We'll have a very robust discussion on that on the 3/14 meeting. And then I hope only minor tweaks after that. Just remember, this is the schedule that we're working to. Again, March 14th is the draft rules that I just talked about. March 28th, I've pretty much got to have it buttoned up. I'll be final opportunity for any tweaks. And then March 31st, I have to file those proposed permanent rules. And then May 9th, and then it's at least 30 days it's out there for the entire world to take shots at. And then May 9th, we'll have the rulemaking hearing before the State Housing Board. And then June 30th will be the effective date of the adopted rules, with beating the July 1st deadline by minutes. July 3rd will actually be the first business day that we can actually see those things because of the 4th of July holiday. Pretty much that's it. Any questions, discussions, final thoughts? John, I saw your hand go up first.
Oh, thanks, Sam. I'd just like to step back to the installation requirements. A lot of it was talking about local jurisdictions and how they approve how they're set and everything. But I want to reiterate that they need to review those Colorado Revised Statute for plumbing, the 12-155, and also the one for electrical, 12-115.
Okay.
Both of those require, and these are state laws, so they're for the entire state. And both of them require that structures that have plumbing, electrical, or gas or installed, that they are required to have a permit, and they should be inspected either by a state inspector or by certified AHJ inspectors, unless it's certified by the Division of Housing. So at this point in time, since tiny homes don't have that certification, we really run into those issues when they pull them on site and set them. The local jurisdiction might accept the setting of it, but they aren't complying with state because nobody is inspected that's supposed to inspect the plumbing or electrical. So the electrical gets by with the 50 amp pedestal type of setup, so they'll approve that. If they connect up, then they don't. But coming to plumbing for water, sewer, and gas pipe installations, we're supposed to look at all that unless they meet your certifications on a Division of Housing. So I just wanted to bring that up. And if there's any questions, or if you need me to kind of send an email to you with a little more description for you, I can sure try and do that for you.
John, I'd appreciate that. Yeah, send me that email.
Okay.
Mark, I still see your hand up, but I'm not sure if it's if you're still with us or not. Janine?
I just want to reiterate what John just said. That's the concern that Tim, Pate, and I had in general. So once we get that hammered out, life is good.
Okay, and that's dealing with the installation side of that, right, whole equation, right?
Yes, that's one part of it. Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Eric, you had a pretty good question down here, and I know we're at time, but if you guys have any suggestions for handling the hundreds of existing tiny homes that did not go through the process, if you guys would be willing to send me those thoughts, I'll try to collect them.
Yeah, not, we could talk about it next time, maybe. It's just, that's a big issue that's already been flagged. What do we do with all those existing units?
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much for being patient with me and rocking through this. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. I think we got a lot done. I think when we get the next draft set up there, I'll have a list of changes that we can work off of and go through. But some of you guys may be getting calls from me in the next week or so as we hammer this out. But again, please give me any comments that you want or draft wording by March 7th. I'm working on these rules every single day now until that March 7th version is done. Okay. All right. Thanks. Jim, if you want to end that recording, that would be great. And if not,